Female protagonist, no system, masked knight, Genshin Impact. Tivat Continent is a magical world full of elements and magic, where people explore the unknown world to their heart's content, and travelers come and go to witness the changes in the world. And it was against this backdrop that a young girl unexpectedly came from a world outside of the Tivat Continent. She separated from her brother, and before they parted ways, Zhao Mingcheng gave her enough strength to protect herself and promised Kevlan that he would definitely come back to pick her up. The story unfolds under such circumstances. Preface. Crossing to the Tivat Continent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Reminder before reading. This book is a spin-off of Knight's Journey. DC Terminal, telling the story of the protagonist Zhao Mingcheng's sworn sister, Kevlan, who travels to the Tivat Continent due to an accident, and then embarks on a new life and adventure here. The content of this book is destined not to be too extensive, but rather as a spin-off to supplement the story of the character, Kevlan. Oh, by the way, the copper content in this book may exceed the limit, so readers who don't like this topic can stop here and don't have to continue reading. Also, let me clarify that the author is Chef Fu Ningna. Darkness has always been the most feared thing for humans since ancient times, because in that unknown darkness, there are unknown dangers, but people never have a sense of fear towards the starry sky, only an endless longing and exploration, and the reason behind it is because of the existence of stars. In the boundless pitch-black sky, it is the presence of stars that has aroused countless yearnings among people. And now, under another starry sky, a fantasy world called Tivat Continent is unfolding a story unique to this world. A grand play is about to be staged. Fengdan, a kingdom on the continent of Tivat, is ruled by a deity named Fucurus, who is the water demon god in the seven rulers of the earth, responsible for justice and judgment. Therefore, this country can also be called the country of water, the country of justice, and so on. Tonight, in a dark alley in the city of Fengdan, there is a great play playing out, a thrilling exploration of the Fengdan water god. The protagonist in this drama is the water god Fucurus, or it can be said Funina, and the person behind the plot of this great play, named Aracino, is a Fengdan and also the fourth servant in the organization of the April Fools of the Winter Kingdom. Of course, so far, Zhidong and Fengdan still have good diplomatic relations on the surface, so the servant did not show his true face to spy on the water god. After changing into a black tight-fitting suit, putting on a black cloak, wearing a black eye mask, and dressing up in disguise, the servant pushed open the door and set out in the moonlight. As early as the servant returned to Fengdan, after some investigation, the servant had already been puzzled by the water god Funina. She didn't understand why the water god ignored the prophecy, why he acted as if he didn't care about it, why does the other party not appear to be a deity? With various doubts in mind, the servant asked his subordinates of fools to investigate the water god. Within a few days, the trajectory of the water god's journey was drawn on a map and presented to the servant. This is also the reason why the servant will take action tonight. There is a trial at the Ophicular theater this afternoon, and Funina always arrives at each trial on time. According to time calculations, after Funina returned from the opera house, it was already dark. At this time it's a good time to take action. After leaving the stronghold, the agile servant flipped over and jumped onto the roof of the tall building. In no time, she arrived at the high building near the Mamong Palace, and then lay in ambush here, waiting for Funina's return. Humming a beautiful tune and stepping on elegant steps, the servant looked down and immediately locked onto her target for tonight. The water god Funina. However, the servant did not act rashly, as Funina was still accompanied by a person. The dual agent of the Ophicular opera, Lorraine. After some consideration, the servant chose to wait and see the situation change, because she was afraid that if she were to fight against the water god later, the situation would be like a 2-to-1 battle if Kevlan was present. She wouldn't make such a foolish decision. After all, she is not the fighting maniac of the young master. Moreover, the purpose of coming here tonight is only to investigate the details of the water god, not to fight to the death. Watching Lorraine deliver Fanina to the entrance of the Mormon palace, the servant thought there should be no chance tonight. Thank you, Lorraine. Fanina stood in front of the Mormon palace and turned to Lorraine, saying, you should go back and rest earlier. There will be other trials tomorrow. Claude's expression remained unchanged, but a person who looked incredibly cold said to Fanina, Lord Fanina, your safety. Oh, don't worry, this is the Momong Palace. Who dares to harm me here? Fanina waved her right hand slightly grandly, as if conducting a band. Alright, you've been tired all day. Go back and rest well. Chlorina couldn't resist her own deity, and finally nodded at Fanina before turning and leaving. After bidding farewell to Claude, Funina's originally smiling face suddenly collapsed. For example, it's like you've been eating delicious bread all along, only to suddenly find that one of the bread has gone moldy, and her face instantly turned bad. And at this moment, Fanina was like this, with a smile on her face as she talked to Clolland, suddenly turning into a cloud of melancholy, and her eyes seemed to be filled with deep-seated exhaustion. The servant couldn't help but mutter to himself as he watched Funina's expression change so much. What's going on? However, before the servant could continue to observe, Fanina laughed again and returned to her previous state of full confidence. Then she prepared to return to the Momong Palace. At this point, the servant is also preparing to return home. She thinks there should be no chance tonight, but, meow, I don't know where a cat's meow came from, which instantly caught Funina's attention. After Fanina followed the sound source a few steps forward, a black and white colored kitten caught her eye. Wow, kitten. At this moment, a joyful expression leapt onto the paper. Fanina ran towards the kitten excitedly, you little thing, come over here. Meow. The cat seemed very afraid of strangers and decisively fled to the nearby alley after seeing Fanina. How dare you run? Stop me. Fanina leapt over the green potted plant in front of her as if she had discovered a beloved toy, and followed the kitten into the alley. It was precisely at this moment that the servant who seized this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity took action. She jumped up from the rooftop of the tall building and quickly fell towards the ground, aiming straight at Fanina, who was teasing the cat. And Fanina was completely unaware of this, still happily masturbating the cat, her expression very enjoyable and intoxicated. At the same time, beneath the false sky, a faint blue vortex gate suddenly appeared on the land of Tiva. The vortex is filled with an incredibly violent force of time and space. As the door opens, the energy inside the vortex begins to overflow, and the entire sky of the Tivat Continent begins to be eroded. And at this moment three rays of light rushed out of the vortex, and then transformed into long-tailed meteors in the sky, spreading out and flying in all directions towards Maple Dan. Finally, they disappeared into the sky. Watching as more and more energy leaked out of the vortex, about to shake the entire starry sky of Tivat buzzing, the dazzling light, like the stars of the Milky Way, shines at this moment, and the source of the light is in the vortex. This light continues to spread out, eliminating the energy leaked outside the door, while also constantly closing the entire door. Until the end, just as the door was about to close, the source of the light also rushed out of the vortex gate. At this moment, if you look closer, you will find that the source of the light is a sword, a holy sword that is as dazzling as the Milky Way stars. And this holy sword is now tightly held in the arms of a young girl, whose eyes are tightly closed and breathing is rapid. It seems that she has been seriously injured while passing through that time and space passage. Click. The vortex gate stopped overflowing energy, and the gate was completely closed by the energy of this holy sword. Then countless rays of light rushed back into the holy sword, and the holy sword fell into a dead silence for a moment, as if everything just now had nothing to do with it. The girl held the holy sword in her arms, and as she fell into a coma, she and the holy sword fell from a height of tens of thousands of meters towards the Tiva land below. Just as the girl left here, countless eyes and strange forces began to surge in, finally gathering at the place where the space-time vortex had just appeared. What's going on? Outsiders. Outsiders. Are you an outsider again? A descendant. Find him, her. Find him, her. Just like the babbling in my sleep, and like the recordings played on an old tape recorder, strange and disorderly sounds resound in the world of falsehood. However, this scene only lasted for a few seconds, and these guys from various forces seem to have sensed the presence of others, but in a moment they dispersed separately. The sky has once again returned to calm, but no one knows how long it can last. The young girl with the sword continued to fall towards the ground. Due to the high-speed descent, her body gradually turned red due to friction with the air, and even the clothes she was wearing showed signs of catching fire. However, even so, all of this had no effect on her own body, as if not a human. Above the ground, Funina, escorted by Clawland, returned to the entrance of the Mormon palace, preparing to return to her residence. However, the sudden meowing of a cat caught her attention. I don't know why, but Funina is particularly fond of this little cat, and can even be said to be fascinated. She is desperate to masturbate the cat, but as a result, she accidentally falls into a small alley. Therefore caught by the servant. Wow, a scream pierced through the night sky, and the alley echoed with the girl's pleading for mercy. Who are you? Funina fell to the ground, her legs trembling with fear. She begged her servant repeatedly, what are you doing? Don't kill me. Please. But the fact is that the servant only descended from the sky and did not take any further action after intimidating Funina. The reason why she stopped was because she felt a certain aura of curse from Funina. The heart of the gods is not on Funina's body, and why does she have a cursed aura? The servant muttered to herself, but she doesn't necessarily think tonight's operation was a failure. At least she has confirmed some intelligence, right? Intelligence doesn't matter how much, but whether it works. For the servant, she has already made a profit tonight and is ready to evacuate, but the Funina in front of her. The servant looked at Funina through the eye mask, her whole body trembling like a sieve, and the fear that came from her heart didn't seem to be disguised at all. But at this moment, another question arose in the servant's mind, which was, since Funina is so afraid of being assassinated, why does she insist on being the water god? From this point on, the servant no longer regarded Funina as the water god and began to guess who the water god was from others. The servant's eyes flickered as she walked step by step towards Funina, slowly lifting her right hand. Before leaving, let's try again and see if Funina knows who the real water god is. Sure, the servant approached Funina step by step, and Funina had already weakened her legs and couldn't stand up. However, in this situation, a surprising scene occurred that surprised the servant. Funina chose to pick up a branch from the nearby flower bushes and aimed it at the servant. A trembling and thin body, a weapon that is both powerless and ridiculous, and a face full of tears but gritted its teeth. The servant saw despair in Funina, but she didn't understand why even though Funina thought she was doomed, her body automatically took on a protective posture. Sure, such a contradiction makes the servant feel unbelievable, but she is the fourth executive among fools. As long as she can achieve her goal, she can do anything, even trample on a little girl's desire to survive. Sure, however, when the servant was about to take off her limbs and turn her into a swine, a light suddenly flashed in the sky of the alley, and the light made the alley more and more bright. The servant could even feel a hot wave of air coming to his face. Seemingly sensing the approaching danger, the servant jumped up in the next moment and made a backflip, dodging towards the back. He narrowly missed a meteorite falling from the sky, which landed directly in the alley. Bang! At the moment when the meteorite landed, the roar of the explosion woke up the entire Fengdan court, and the towering flames woke many people up from their sleep. The shadow-chasing court was also fully mobilized. Listening to the piercing alarm in his ear, the servant looked around after landing safely and found that the entire city had woken up. It seems like we really need to leave, the servant muttered to herself, and then she shifted her attention back to the meteorite in front of her. This time, through the heavy flames and smoke, the servant finally saw the true face of the meteorite. It was a human woman, about 1.69 meters tall. The other party was only wearing a tattered piece of clothing, and due to the scorching fire, the remaining part of that piece of clothing was disappearing. A black shawl of long hair curled up under the scorching fire, but what really caught the servant's attention was the blade he was using to support his body. The blade was a stone sword, appearing grayish-white throughout, but for some reason, every time she looked at the blade again, the servant's calm heart began to beat. At this moment, she felt the threat of death. There's something strange, the servant shook his head, calming his mind. It's time to leave, let's find another opportunity to investigate in the future. After speaking, the servant disappeared into the alley like a flexible cat after a few walks. On the other hand, Funina had also seen a meteorite falling from the sky, but she thought she was already dead. When she closed her eyes in despair, a warm current enveloped her whole body. When she opened her eyes again, the servant had already left, but the surroundings had turned into a sea of fire. Although the girl standing in front of her was covered in injuries, she still held on and turned to ask her. "Didn't you get hurt?" "Don't worry, it's okay now." Chapter 1. The New World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Screaming my body. Cannot move. Quickly, quickly, the person in front of us should move away. We need to perform surgery on the injured immediately. Injured person. Surgery. Am I injured again? But why can't I open my eyes? Is the body also out of control? Doctor, her injury is so severe. Is there any way she can be saved? The voice. Sounds a bit familiar, who is it? Who are you? I am extremely eager to get an answer, to know who the owner of that voice is, and after constantly trying, I finally opened my eyes. Even though it was just a small crack. A white-haired girl wearing a blue dress, her figure caught my eye, and I also recognized her identity from my vague memory. She was the person I saved in the alley. No, the person who was saved now is actually me. Don't worry, Lord Funina. We will do our best to save her. Funina. Your Excellency. Is her name Funina? Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Of course. I can hear it, but now my body doesn't follow my command. Is it because it was damaged during the journey? Hold on, you must survive. Please, you must not die. The voice in my ear gradually decreased, and my vision gradually blurred. The white-haired girl named Funina was getting farther and farther away from me, which was also the last scene I saw before I fell into a coma again. Don't die. Don't worry, I haven't died so easily yet because since that day, I haven't lived for myself. Chatting. The bright sun shines brightly in the azure sky, and warm sunshine spreads across the earth, awakening sleeping people and also awakening all things in nature. Birds stand on branches and sing cheerful songs. A new day has begun. Fengdan, this is a kingdom known as fairness and justice on the continent of Tivat, and all of this is thanks to their rulers, or rather the god of the Fengdan people. The water god Fucaris. Nowadays, our deity Fucaros. No, Lord Funina is not staying in her Mormon palace, but has been in the hospital since last night. At this moment, our Lord Funina is curled up on a hospital bed, covered in a warm blanket. She doesn't know where she threw her little round hat, and she is still talking in her sleep, but it's just some vague babbling. Why did Funina sleep in the hospital bed? The answer to this question let the girl standing by the window at this moment answer. He is 1.69 meters tall, with long hair that has been curled up due to the previous high temperature. He has brown eyes and is wearing a hospital uniform. But what really catches the eye is actually a stone sword held in the arms of a young girl. Under the sunshine, the blade of the stone sword shines slightly with a cold light. The unknown girl stood by the window with a sword, staring intently at the bustling scenery of the street outside. This is not the world I am familiar with, the girl murmured. Brother, where are you? Before the girl could take a few more glances at the world outside the window, the murmurs in her ear gradually decreased. When she turned around, she noticed that the beautiful girl who had taken over her hospital bed was on the verge of waking up. Fanina. The girl murmured softly, this was last night. I heard it from the doctor in a state of confusion. Her name is Fanina. Next, as the girl had guessed, Fanina struggled to tear open her eyelids and open her eyes after stopping talking, and woke up from her sleep. The blue and white dress on her body was covered in wrinkles under her pressure, and her double ponytails draped behind her were also tied in many knots. The most eye-catching among them was Fanina's soft and fluffy white silly hair lying down. She looked quite silly and cute, even a young girl couldn't help but look handsome. Fanina felt like she had fallen asleep. After waking up, she slowly sat up from the hospital bed and stared straight ahead for a minute before realizing, this is not my room. Looking at Fanina's reaction, the young girl was at a loss to the second monk. From her perspective, Fanina's slow reaction looked like an old lady. When the girl roused about her slow appearance in her heart, Fanina's eyes gradually regained their brightness, and her consciousness gradually woke up. Finally, hey, this is woo-woo. A deafening scream came from Fanina's mouth, but before she could scream a few more, the girl stepped forward and raised her hand to cover Fanina's mouth. Calm down, this is the hospital, please keep quiet, the girl sighed. Miss Fanina, I carried you to bed this morning, so could you please calm down now? Listening to the girl's explanation in her ear, Fanina gradually stopped struggling. After the girl let go of her hand, Fanina turned her head and stuttered, asking the other person, How did you know my name? The girl took 2 steps back with the stone sword in her arms, dragged a chair over from the side, and sat down in a calm tone. She replied, Actually, when you took me to the hospital last night, my consciousness had already awakened. It was just that my injury was very serious and I couldn't react to it. So when I heard the conversation between you and the doctor, I fell into a coma again. Oh, it's like this. Fanina nodded, but soon she had another question. And you? You haven't told me your name yet. Kevlar. Kevlar said word by word, this is my name. Kevlan. Kenlan, it doesn't sound like the name of a maple man. Fanina pondered for a moment before asking, Miss Kenlan, where are you from? Just call me Kevlan, you're my savior, there's no need for us to be so separated. After correcting Kevlan's way of calling herself, Kevlan paused for a moment, pondered for a moment, and then turned her head to look out the window. I am not from your world, I come from other parallel universes. Parallel universe. What is that? Fanina searched for memories in her mind. There seems to be no country by that name on the continent of Tivat, whether it was 500 years ago or 500 years ago to this day. Kevlan furrowed her brow slightly. Tivat Continent. 500 years ago. In just one sentence, Fanina provided Kevlan with a lot of key information, such as the world she is currently in called Tivat Continent, and the young girl in front of her who appears to be her age is actually over 500 years old. Is she a special case? Is it the longevity race of this world? Or is it that the technology tree in this world is very advanced and can already support individuals to have a lifespan of 100 years? Many questions swirled in Kevlan's mind, but she still answered Fanina's question earlier. Simply put, I came from a world outside of the Tivat Continent. Hey, really? You also came from a world beyond that starry sea. Fanina opened her eyes wide, looking very surprised, mixed with a hint of curiosity. Also, Kevlan asked in response, did anyone else come from outside of Tivat before me? He's a traveler named Kong. A few months ago, he and his little pet came to Fengdan, Fanina explained to Kevlan. But a while ago, he didn't know what he had done and was thrown into prison by Novelette. Originally, Kevlan planned to find this guy named Kong. After all, he also came from outside of Tivat. She planned to learn some intelligence from him as much as possible, but now it seems that most people who can go to prison are not good people. Kevlan initially labeled the guy named Kong as not a good person, and then she turned her gaze to the girl in front of her. It seems that to survive in this world, one must first start from this girl named Fengdan. Can you tell me? How did you come to our Tivat continent? Fengdan moved her body and lay on the bed in front of Kevlan, with a curious expression in her eyes. When asked by Fengdan, Kevlan fell silent. She lifted her hand and tapped her head, as if sorting out her blurry memories. Fengdan didn't disturb her, but instead her attention began to shift to the stone sword in Kevlan's arms. This sword had been in her hands since last night, and even after entering the operating room, she didn't let go. Several male doctors tried their best to take her sword, but couldn't grab it. This outsider named Kevlan must be hiding some kind of secret, maybe. She can bring me miracles. On this side, Fengdan had just finished speaking her innermost thoughts. On the other hand, Kevlan had already sorted out her thoughts and recounted what had happened before she arrived on the continent of Tivat. I remember before arriving in this world called Tivat Continent, my brother and I were deeply trapped in a time and space tunnel. Where is this? When I regained my senses, I opened my eyes exhausted, and the first thing I saw was a boundless darkness, with some gray-like flowing lights moving left and right in this dark space. Kevlan, are you awake? A familiar voice came to my ear, which was the voice of my brother Zhao Mingcheng. Yes. What? I really wanted to communicate with my brother to figure out where we are now, but my throat seemed to be damaged and I couldn't say a complete sentence. Stay calm, with me around, you don't need to worry about the current situation. My brother told me this, but before I could relax, I suddenly felt a severe tremor all over my body. This sense of shock does not come from myself, but is influenced by the outside world. I tilted my head to look behind my brother, and then I saw a crack appearing behind him. As if a mirror had been broken. Damn! Can't you hold on anymore? I looked at my brother as he turned around and faced the crack. Is my injury so serious? I can't even resist the small turbulence in the space. Whoa! Bang! Before my brother could finish speaking, the whole space trembled again in the next moment. And this time, I watched helplessly as the mirror was completely shattered, countless fragments scattered and flew away, and then those grey exercises were like living creatures, rushing towards us siblings one after another. I tried my best to move, to make my body move, so that I could help my brother, but all of this was in vain. I couldn't control my body at all. I was injured too badly and my consciousness was always unconscious. You guys, protect Flora, you must protect her. I saw my brother turn his head and seem to be explaining something to someone around me, but I no longer have the energy to listen because my attention is now entirely focused on his eyes. His eyes emit a faint blue light, but that light is intermittent, which means his injury may be even more serious than mine. Countless grey trainers rushed towards us, and my brother also released countless boomerang-like attacks, cutting off those trainers, but oh no. A calm voice rang in my ear, Zhao Mingcheng, behind. I don't know what happened, my consciousness became increasingly blurred, my eyelids became heavier, until I finally fell completely into a coma when I heard a voice, Fleur, I will come to find you. I will definitely find you back, so be sure to wait for me before I come to find you. Blade King's Killing Guide. I have read the 10 Holy Swords. Blade King 10*/Kevlan hugged the stone sword in her arms and said, after that, I barely woke up once, but when I woke up again, the first thing I saw was in that alley, you were in danger. Hey. Okay, stop talking. Fengdan quickly stepped forward and covered Kevlan's mouth, which made Kevlan very confused. Is there anything she can't say? Isn't it normal to encounter danger and be rescued by someone? Kevlan was not very clear about what Fengdan was hiding, but as soon as she realized that she needed to rely on the other person to obtain information about this world, she remained silent about it. Because Fanina stayed in the hospital bed from beginning to end without getting out of bed, she actually straightened her body just now to approach Kevlan, and in this way, only her knees were used to maintain balance, but at this moment Fanina's stomach made a noise, and then her knees softened, and her entire upper body landed on Kevlan's lap. Ah! Fanina's face turned extremely red. I'm hungry and I'm weak. Ah! Kevlan sighed imperceptibly, then moved the stone sword behind her with her right hand to avoid hurting Fanina. She then reached out to grab Fanina's waist with her left hand and picked her up. Miss Fanina, although we shouldn't be separated, we're not yet familiar, so could you please go back to your room to sleep in the future? At Kevlan's words, Fanina's face turned even redder and she said, I'm not right. By the way, last night I was watching you enter the emergency room, and the doctor finished the surgery for you in less than 2 hours. It was already 1 o'clock in the morning by then. Later, the doctor arranged a ward for you. Which is here. I originally planned to stay with you for a while and then go back, but why? Why is it you who wakes up and sleeps in the hospital bed, right? Kevlan has a splitting headache. If your world has the same timing as mine, then I woke up at 3 a.m. this morning and found you sleeping in front of my bed. I'm afraid you might catch a cold, so I gave you the hospital bed. So it's like this. Not right. Fanina looked like she had a sudden realization, but soon she discovered another problem. Last night, the doctor clearly told me that you were very seriously injured and the success rate of the surgery was not high, but the surgery was not only a complete success, but you could also get out of bed and move around in less than 3 hours after the surgery. Your physical condition is so terrifying. At Fanina's words, Kevlan's face suddenly darkened. She remained silent and seemed to recall some bad memories. Ahahaha, what? Let's change the topic. Fanina noticed that the other person's face had turned pale and quickly changed the topic. You should also be hungry, right? Coincidentally, you have regained your ability to move freely. Let's go eat something together, how about it? Faced with Fanina's invitation, Kevlan struggled out of painful memories and returned to reality. I'll thank you here for now. Chapter 2. Past History. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Good breakfast time. Fanina elegantly wiped the corners of her mouth with a tissue, then waved her hand and said to the person standing behind her, "Excuse me, 2 cups of black tea, 1 for each of the ladies." In the VIP private room on the 2nd floor of the Debo Grand Hotel, Fanina and Kevlan sit here, enjoying a delicious breakfast. At this moment, Fanina is like a big star in Kevlan's eyes, shining, confident, noble, and elegant. Compared to the way she cried bitterly and begged for mercy at the person who wanted to assassinate her last night, it was completely different. Recalling the scene from last night, Kevlan couldn't help but lose her mind until she heard a sentence from the waiter before waking up. "Thank you for taking care of our business, Lord Water God." The waiter bowed to Fanina. "I'll go prepare tea now." Kevlan watched as the waiter left, her mind echoing with what the other person had just said. Lord Water God. Water God, is she a deity? Kevlan shifted her gaze to Fanina, but at this moment Fanina was busy looking at her own beauty, holding a small mirror and looking around. It is worth mentioning that Kevlan's attention was occasionally drawn to the silly hair on Fanina's head from beginning to end. Mainly because it was so eye-catching, the silly hair was trembling, and Fanina didn't seem to have the idea of hiding it with a hat, just exposing it. "By the way, Kevlan," Fanina seemed to remember something and asked, "Do the new clothes I've prepared for you fit well?" "It fits well," Kevlan nodded. "Thank you for spending the money. This is nothing. As a water god, this little money is just a sprinkle of water," Fanina said arrogantly. "But actually, I wanted to ask if you like this outfit. If you don't like it, I can have someone change it for you." Kevlan's previous clothes had already been burned to ashes in the flames, leaving only some coarse cloth strips hanging on her body at the time. Therefore, after completing the discharge procedures for Kevlan, Fengdan had someone bring some clothes for Kevlan to choose for herself. In the end, Kevlan chose a set of clothes with black as the main color and gold stripes as a supplement. She wore a cape-like windbreaker, with a long hem that fell between her thighs. However, when Kevlan picked up the dress that matched this outfit, her face became very strange. She had never worn a dress before, and in her opinion, a dress was just too inconvenient. But it's not easy to make terms with Fengdan at the moment, so she can only grit her teeth and put on this black short skirt. After finally putting on the black silk and long boots, she finished dressing up. Of course, leggings are essential. It's very beautiful, Kevlan nodded and praised. I'm now in poverty and have no knowledge of the world. So, if you could provide me with the clothes to wear and pay for treatment and hospitalization, I would be very grateful to you. I truly deserve to be the water god. Fengdan exaggeratedly covered her mouth and smiled. As the god of Fengdan, I will naturally take care of everyone who comes here, so all you need to do is praise my greatness. Fengdan's every word was exaggerated to the extreme, including her actions. Kevlan murmured silently in her heart. At that moment, the door of the compartment was opened, and Fengdan's voice had just dropped. The waiter returned with 2 cups of hot tea. Lord Fengdan, you're in your guest's black tea. The waiter put down the hot tea. I wish you a pleasant day ahead. After the waiter left the private room, Fengdan spread out her hand to Kevlan and said, "Friend who has come all the way, since you know nothing about our Tivat Continent, then I, the water god Fukuros, reluctantly acts as your guide to answer your questions. You just need to praise my greatness and generosity." Kevlan's eyebrows furrowed even deeper. She vaguely sensed from the beginning that Fengdan was performing herself, especially after witnessing Fengdan's crying face last night. Kevlan became even more convinced that Fengdan was acting. But what role is she playing? Why do we have to play it? Which is the most authentic between her from last night and Fengdan, who is now appearing in front of Kevlan? With many doubts in her heart, Kevlan asked the first question. First of all, I want to understand the Tivat Continent. Without any complicated explanation, you just need to tell me how many countries make up this world and what management systems each country implements. Fengdan thought for a moment and organized her own wording. There are a total of 7 human kingdoms on the continent of Tivat, namely Mond, Liyue, Inazumi, Sumi, Fengdan, Nata, and Jidong. As for the management systems of each country. Fengdan thought for a moment and suddenly changed the topic. Before that, let me tell you how these 7 countries came about. Excuse me. Kevlan picked up the teacup and took a light sip of the tea. The tea here tastes strange, probably due to the different techniques of stir-frying. Many years ago, there was no human existence in this world. At that time, the rulers of the Tivat Continent were 7 incredibly powerful dragon kings, each occupying their own territories and declaring their masters' identities to the entire world. Until later, the arrival of celestial beings broke this pattern. Fengdan's eyes showed a hint of confusion. I have not experienced that dark and war-ridden era, and I only learned about it from my predecessors. Dragon King Nibelungen led the 7 dragons to engage in a prolonged battle with the Heavenly Man. The war was so devastating that the entire world was almost destroyed. In the end, the winner of that battle was the Heavenly Man. He is Tianli. After that great war, Tianli began to repair the Tivat Continent and created the human race, making the world once again full of vitality. After sipping her black tea and putting down her cup, Kevlan sighed and said, "It seems that your world has had such a magnificent history before." She turned her head to look out the window at the blue sky and said, "Tianli. Is the Tiandao or world consciousness that my brother talked about the same thing?" "No, it shouldn't be. Tianli is an outsider, at best. It should be the creator god of the present-day Tivat Continent, not the one who formulates and controls rules like Tiandao. Did you think of anything?" Fanina took a sip of tea to moisten her throat and asked curiously after seeing Kevlan talking to herself. It's nothing, Kevlan shook her head. My speculations are just some, let's continue. Cough. Then it's time to get to the main point. Fanina cleared her throat and continued, while the heavens created humanity, they also created a castle suspended above this world, which is Sky Island. Later on. Although the emergence of humans brought some vitality to this world, there was not only humans as a race on the Tivat Continent at that time, but also other more dangerous and powerful beings, which were demon gods. Some demon gods can summon wind and rain, summon lightning, some demon gods can summon tsunami tides, destroy heaven and earth, and some demon gods can move mountains and fill the sea, guarding a side. At that time, the world was extremely dangerous, and it was fundamentally impossible for humans, as weak beings, to survive in such a world. At this point, Fanina suddenly paused for a moment, her eyes flickering as if recalling something. Humans. Humans. Kevlan noticed that Fanina's condition seemed to be very different. Just as she was about to raise her hand and shake it in front of her, Fanina regained her composure and continued speaking on her own. In such a chaotic world, the only way for humans to survive is to leverage their innate advantages, which countless demons and monsters cannot possess. Wisdom and courage. By relying on wisdom, people have survived time and time again. By relying on courage, people have gone to the future time and time again. In this process, people constantly pray to the gods, to the deity who created them, and pray for the arrival of tomorrow. In the end, Tianli heard their prayers and heard the repeated calls and cries of the people on the earth. Tianli established rules for the world, called the 7 rulers of the world. The war of the demons began as a result. In that turbulent and chaotic era, countless demons sacrificed all their wisdom and strength to seize the land of Tivat and the position of rulers of other species. Although this great war was limited to the earth and only a dispute between demons, it still broke out like the heavens and earth. In this process, people began to cooperate with some demons, and they began to fight for their own future. Hundreds of years have passed quietly, and people have established a strong alliance with the demon gods. Until then, the demon god war has also come to an end. The 7 demon gods who ultimately won the competition have become the 7 rulers of the earth determined by the heavenly principles, becoming the rulers of the 7 countries on the present-day land of Tiva, right? Kevlan took the conversation and said, it turns out. It's really an interesting world. Over the long course of historical evolution, humans and demons have formed alliances, each fighting for their own future, and in the end, the victor rightfully becomes the new owner of this land. Becoming a king and defeating a bandit is the same everywhere. Ha ha ha. It seems you already understand, Fanina said with a cross of her waist, smug. You truly deserve to be the lord of the water god. It was so easy for friends from other countries to understand the origin of the Tivat Continent. But I have a question. Fanina changed her tone and looked at Kevlan. When you were in the hospital just now, you told me, what were you and your brother there? Separated in the time and space tunnel, and the other companions followed you to the continent of Tivat, right? Kevlan nodded, her mind involuntarily recalling what had happened in the time and space tunnel before, but this time her focus was on, oh no. Zhao Mingcheng, behind. Kevlan said that she was very familiar with the voice, but couldn't remember it for a moment. Fanina, Kevlan looked up at the other person and asked, is there anything in your world? A police agency. I want to ask them to help me find my companions. Well, the difficulty may be very high, Fanina thought for a moment before replying, let's not mention your companion's appearance. First of all, you cannot be sure if your companion has fallen into our Fengdan. What if they have fallen into another country? Our Fengdan shadow-chasing court cannot reach out to any other country. Kevlan frowned as she searched her mind for memories, trying to match the image and voice in her memory, while pondering what she should do next. Firstly, it is necessary to find a way to make money. From her arrival in this world until now, Fengdan has helped pay for the hospital's treatment, hospitalization, clothes, and breakfast. She cannot stay by Fengdan's side forever, so she must find a way to make money. The next step is how to find one's lost companion. Kevlan looked at the stone sword leaning on the side chair. Thanks to Fengdan, Kevlan and the doctor asked for some white bandages. Then she tied the stone sword with these white bandages and made a sling with the bandages to hang it on her body. Companion. Kevlan murmured softly, the companions who came to this world with me have a fantasy drive book bound to this sword, and the Noi number. By the way. Kevlan's mind was filled with excitement. She remembered who the owner of that voice was. I have it. Fengdan suddenly clasped her hands together and applauded, bringing Kevlan's consciousness back to reality. You can go to the Adventurers Association to get commissioned. The Adventurers Association. Entrusted. Kevlan twitched at the corner of her mouth. What kind of adventure-themed game is this? Roast is attributed to Roast. Kevlan still earnestly asked. Adventurer Association is a neutral organization that provides various kinds of assistance to adventurers, right? That's right, and the power of the Adventurers Association is spread throughout the entire Tivat Continent. If your quest to find someone is not completed in Fontaine for more than a few months, the Adventurers Association will re-evaluate your quest, raise its level, and have other countries' Adventurers Associations also publish this quest. Listening to Fengdan's explanation, Kevlan sighed and said, sigh. That's the only way for now. However. Kevlan scratched her head with a rare expression, I'm penniless now and can only borrow some money from you. But don't worry, I'm planning to register as an adventurer. When I make more commissions and earn enough money, I'll repay it to you. Woo-hoo-hoo. Fengdan suddenly chuckled at this moment. The next moment, she stood up and raised her hand to Kevlan, saying, Friend of a foreign land, Lord Benchue has already said that you only need to praise my greatness and generosity to repay the money. Ha ha ha. You already know my identity, don't you? I am the water god Fukuros, the ruler of Maple City. Money is not a problem on my territory, so you don't need to repay me. Faced with Fengdan's generous gesture, Kevlan shook her head and said firmly, No, one size fits all. Last night, you saved me and allowed me to receive treatment in the hospital, so this time I owe you a favor. It's agreed, I will definitely repay you the money. Fengdan's mouth twitched, she didn't expect Kevlan to be so stubborn that she even said something about the agreement. Sigh. Alright, Fengdan shrugged as she admitted defeat. Since you're so persistent, let's make an agreement. After you have completed enough commissions, come back to me to repay the money. So now, let's go together to the Adventurers Association in Fengdan City. Chapter 3. Adventurers Association. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Here we are, the Adventurers Association is ahead. After leaving the Debo Hotel, Fengdan and Kevlan rushed non-stop towards the Adventurers Association. Both of them ran along the way, which puzzled Kevlan. When she spoke out her doubts, Fengdan answered her like this, What? I'm sorry, Kevlan. There's a trial at the Ophicular Opera House this afternoon, and I have to go there. Kevlan's head was full of question marks. Trial. Fengdan, are you a judge or a judge? Do you need to go there in person? Faced with Kevlan's question, Fengdan suddenly remained silent, as if she was struggling with how to answer Kevlan's question. At this moment, Fengdan suddenly reached out and pointed forward, Look, the Adventurers Association is here. Kevlan was well aware that the other party was shifting the topic, but since Fengdan didn't want to say anything, she didn't intend to break the sand pot and ask to the end. After all, everyone had one or two secrets in their hearts, and relentless questioning would only make the other party dislike them. Therefore, Kevlan gave up and no longer asked. The more important reason is. She was afraid that if she angered Fengdan, there would be no one to pay for her when she went to the Adventurers Association to publish the commission later. Out of this consideration, Kevlan closed her mouth. In such a strange world, Kevlan only wants to protect herself before considering other things. Following Fengdan, she hurriedly ran forward, and when Fengdan stopped, Kevlan also followed closely and looked up at the building next to her. The Adventurers Association, arriving. To be precise, this is the external office window of the Adventurer Association, but most adventurers have only come here before and only need to come here to hand over commissions. Therefore, the Adventurer Association mostly refers to this external office window. And as Kevlan carefully scrutinized the magnificent building in front of her, the voice of a woman came to her ears, "Welcome to the Adventurers Association towards the stars and the abyss." Looking down at the office window, Kevlan immediately locked onto a woman standing behind the counter. The other person always had an upward smile on the corner of their mouth, and a sense of affinity was emanating from all over their body. "Good morning, Catherine." Fengdan brought Kevlan to Catherine's face. "Good morning, Lord Water God." Catherine looked at Fengdan with some surprise. "Why didn't you have a guard accompanying you on your trip today?" "Hee. My water demon god, Fukuros, is the god of Maple Dan. There's no need for protection, and besides, I don't have any extra work this morning, so I brought my new friend over." Fengdan blurted out a sentence that contained her arrogant personality, and all of this was seen by Kevlan. "Hello, my name is Kevlan Kenlan." Kevlan took the initiative to greet Catherine. "Hello, Miss Kenlan. I'm Catherine, the commissioned receptionist of the Adventurers Association." "Nice to meet you," Catherine nodded slightly at Kevlan. "May I ask if you're here today?" "What's up?" "I plan to register as an adventurer and also plan to publish." Kevlan suddenly paused before explaining to Catherine, "I want to find my companions, but they are all not humans, so should this be considered a mission to find people or things?" As soon as Kevlan uttered these words, Fengdan beside her was stunned. "Companion. Not human. What is this all about? Oh, are you trying to say your companion is a demon, right?" Catherine smiled and added for Kevlan. "That's right, that's exactly what I wanted to say." Fengdan quickly followed suit. Kevlan felt a bit tired of Fengdan, but she patiently continued to talk to Catherine and said, "Miss Catherine, can this commission be released?" "It can be, but..." Catherine thought for a moment, "Can you draw their portraits? That would make it easier to find them." After learning that the world was inclined towards a fantasy or magical genre, Kevlan gradually accepted her companion's setting of either humans or monsters. She nodded to Catherine and said, "I still have a lot of confidence in my drawing skills." "Okay," Catherine smiled and then took out a stack of paper and a paintbrush from under the counter. "Miss Kenlan, could you please draw the appearance of your companion? I will go register you as a new adventurer and prepare an adventure certificate manual for you." "Excuse me," Kevlan continued, "is there anything similar to a travel manual? I'm new here and I want to learn more about this country." "Okay, please wait here for a moment." Catherine turned around and left. She was going to the Maple Dan headquarters of the Adventurers Association to register Kevlan in the personnel list, while preparing her with the new adventurer's welfare equipment. An adventure certificate manual, adventurer uniform, wilderness survival guide, and Kevlar's travel manual. Not so valuable, but definitely very practical. New adventurers can rely on these things to get through the difficult moments in the early stages of the adventure. During Catherine's departure, Kevlan took a piece of paper, picked up her paintbrush, and began to paint the appearance of her companion in her mind. "Wow, Kevlan, your drawing skills are really good." Fengdan leaned over from the side and watched as Kevlan began using a brush to outline a rough character framework. "Have you learned it before?" "Yes," Kevlan nodded. "In my world, not long ago I was just an ordinary student, ranking in the top 3 of my grade in academic performance. In my free time after class, I signed up to join many clubs, such as the Painting Society, Photography Society, Olympiad Mathematics Society, etc. Well, no wonder you're so confident in drawing portraits of your companions, Funina praised, but soon she noticed a strange keyword in what Kevlan was saying, which was, hey, what you were saying earlier was. Not long ago, I was just an ordinary Lord Water God. Before Funina could ask Kevlan, a voice called out to her not far away, forcing her to swallow the question that had just reached her mouth. Cough. She tidied up her appearance and adjusted her expression management. Funina showed a bright smile and turned around to welcome the approaching people. They were exactly the guards responsible for Funina's security and itinerary arrangements, as Catherine had mentioned before, and this time they were also brought over by Catherine. Originally, just as Catherine had completed the personnel registration for Kevlan and was about to return to the office window, she happened to encounter this group of guards searching for Funina, so she came with them. Lord Shueishan, please don't disappear silently like this in the future, okay? Yes, everyone went to Mamong Palace this morning under the captain's leadership to pick you up, but we couldn't find you in your room. Miss Lorraine and Miss Sedna are both anxious, thinking that you, Lord Water God, have encountered something. At this moment, everyone is looking for you separately. I'm sorry. Funina explained to the guards what happened last night, of course, referring to taking Kevlan to the hospital instead of being assassinated by the servants. Kevlan was painting portraits while listening attentively to the movements on Funina's side. Now it seems that she is quite popular. It seems that my previous speculation about her is about to be overturned. She should really be the god of Fengdan and the ruler here. Kevlan's movements were quick, taking more than 10 minutes. She then drew portraits of her 3 companions and handed them to Catherine's hand. While taking over the portrait, Catherine also handed over the welfare equipment of the newly prepared adventurer to Kevlan. The Adventure Certificate Handbook, New Adventurer Uniform, Maple Tree Travel Handbook, Wildlife Survival Guide, and Miss Kevlan are kindly requested to keep these equipment properly as they may play an important role in critical moments. Faced with Catherine's suggestion, Kevlan nodded and said, I understand. Miss Catherine, I don't know when my commission will be able to. Before Kevlan could finish speaking, Funina's voice rang from behind her. Kevlan. For Funina's call, Kevlan could only pause her conversation with Catherine and turn around to ask, Funina, what's up? The fist-sized and bulging money bag was thrown over, and Kevlan didn't even glance at it before lifting her hand to catch it. After weighing the heavy money bag in her hand, Kevlan judged that what was inside should be the currency circulating in the world. Should it be gold coins or something like that? Then Funina's voice came again. Kevlan, I have to rush to the Eau Claire Theatre now, after all, I have to take a long patrol boat to get there. So, let's bid farewell here. After greeting Kevlan, Funina rushed towards the platform of the patrol ship surrounded by guards. However, Kevlan did not intend to separate from Funina like this. She still had many things to learn from her partner, so she quickly handed the morass in her hand to Catherine and turned to run towards the nearby commission notice board. Standing in front of the bulletin board, Kevlan just glanced casually before casually removing 2 commissions. Then she quickly returned to Catherine and said to her, Miss Catherine, I want to take these 2 commissions. Catherine picked up the 2 power of attorney chosen by Kevlan and looked at them. Miss Kevlan, I need to remind you that these are 2 orders to fight against the monsters, and one of them is a commission to suppress Slim, which only requires experienced adventurers to cooperate well with their companions to successfully suppress it, but the other commission to suppress the underwater runaway mechanism, the difficulty of this commission is too great. Catherine advised kindly, I have been observing you for a while now. Apart from the sword blade that is carried behind you, there are no protective gear, divine eyes, or diving equipment on your body. Therefore, I do not believe that you can successfully defeat monsters of this level. Therefore, I hope you can put this commission back in place and choose a new one. The Eye of God. Kevlan caught a keyword, what is that? Catherine seemed very surprised that the other party did not know about the existence of the Eye of the Gods, but she explained simply and clearly, the Eye of the Gods is an external magical organ bestowed by the gods in legend. After possessing the Eye of the Gods, ordinary people can use it to wield elemental power, thus achieving abilities far beyond ordinary people. So in my opinion, without the Eye of God, you cannot successfully complete this commission. If a new adventurer fails to complete the commission several times in a row, they will be punished with a deduction of credit points. Therefore, I suggest you think more about it. Faced with Catherine's earnest persuasion, Kevlan's final choice was, I know. But I still choose to take on these 2 commissions. Okay, please wait a moment. Catherine began to finish her work. If you don't mind, please listen to me for a few more words. After you leave the Adventurers Association, turn left and walk a few steps to see a rare house with several sets of older diving suits for sale. As a new adventurer, you probably don't have much money on you. The old diving suits are enough for you to dive underwater and complete the mission. Afterwards, please return to the Adventurers Association and follow the stairs opposite the association until you reach the bottom of the stairs and the end of the road. You will see an iron shop where you can craft weapons and protective gear. Catherine explained in detail to Kevlan while carrying out the commission registration, and after Catherine finished her last sentence, the commission registration was also completed. I sincerely appreciate your suggestion, Miss Catherine. Kevlan thanked her, but now I don't need those things anymore. All I need is this sword. Reaching out to touch the stone sword behind her, Kevlan no longer hesitated. After bidding farewell to Catherine, she quickly rushed towards Funina's direction. Catherine watched as Kevlan disappeared around the corner before reaching out to pick up the paper she had left on the table. 3 pieces of paper, each with a portrait of one of Kevlan's companions, and she also wrote the name of her companion in the bottom right corner of the paper. Catherine read it out while looking. The first picture shows a motorcycle. Catherine doesn't know what it is, she can only guess based on her feelings that it is some kind of transportation. The Noi. In the second picture, a bright red book caught Catherine's eye, and on the cover of that book, a red giant dragon came to life, like a legendary demon dragon. The Dragon of Courage. On the last painting, when Catherine took the paper, a dark golden bat leaped onto the paper. Kivat too. They really have their own unique characteristics, Catherine commented. Wishing you all the best to become a legendary adventurer in the future, Miss Kenland. Put away the drawing paper, Catherine walked to the nearby bulletin board and hung up the 3 commissions one by one. After completing all of this, she returned to the counter and placed the mora handed over to her by Kevlan in the safe of the Adventurer Association. At this point, Kevlan's commission can be considered officially released, and next just wait for other adventurers to come and accept the commission. There was always a smile on the corner of her mouth and a sense of affinity emanating from her whole body. This was Catherine, the commissioned receptionist of the Adventurers Association, who would stay here forever until the Adventurers Association disappeared. Exception. People were coming and going outside of the Adventurers Association, but no one heard any movement here. Chapter 4. First completion of Entrustment. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Fengdan, Patrol Ship Platform, 3-story Navia line. Funina, surrounded by a group of guards, arrived at the platform where the patrol ship had been waiting for a long time. After Funina boarded the patrol ship, the others also boarded the ship one after another. Just as the patrol ship was about to leave the station, a hurried running sound came from not far away, accompanied by a shout. Wait a moment, I haven't boarded the ship yet. Ha! Upon hearing the familiar voice, Funina followed her gaze. Kevlan. How did she catch up? Unfortunately, Funina's actions were not as fast as the guards around her. Just as Kevlan ran out of the elevator, 2 of the guards on the patrol boat stood up and got off the ship, finally stopping in front of Kevlan. Please stop, Mississippi. Those carrying weapons are not allowed to approach Lord Water God. This patrol ship has been requisitioned by Lord Water God. Please wait for the next one. In about 48 minutes, the patrol ship will return from the island of Ilya. Faced with the kind words of advice from the guards, Kevlan breathed a sigh of relief and calmed down a bit. She only realized now that Funina was really a water god, and there were guards who could be responsible for her travel arrangements and safety protection. Kevlan was already thinking about whether to try again in a few days to see if she could encounter Funina. But before she could apologize to the guards, Funina's voice came from the patrol ship. Let her come up. Lord Funina. How can this work? What if she's an assassin? After all, she carries a sword-like weapon. You're right, and Lord Funina, you're so famous. This little girl may not be an assassin, but she could also be your fan. The guards around Funina suggested to her, asking her to think twice, but Funina decisively said, all right, let her come up. My mighty water demon god, Fukuros, would you be afraid of the so-called assassins? Besides, if she really is my fan, wouldn't that be better? I want to be an idol who cares for fans, not a god who is aloof and indifferent. So let her come up and take the same patrol boat as us. In the end, Kevlan boarded the patrol ship and sat next to Funina, while the other guards cast envious and resentful glances at Kevlan, as if complaining that the cargo had taken the opportunity to stick with the water god lord. So, why did you catch up? Funina opened the topic, didn't you just register as an adventurer? Aren't you planning to learn more about the adventurer's daily life and then take on an easier commission? Yes, Kevlan took out her commission hidden in the inner pocket of her windbreaker. I just received 2 commissions to hunt down monsters. Conquering monsters. Funina took the commission from Kevlan's hand. She picked up such a dangerous commission from the beginning. It seems that you have a lot of strength in your ability. Ah. What is this commission? Funina casually glanced at the content on the commission, but just as she glanced at it, she couldn't help but say, conquer the low-level demon slime. Task goals. 8 small water slimes and 3 large water slimes. Conquering out-of-control machinery, mission targets. Funina swallowed her saliva, 5 underwater cruisers and 2 deep-sea attack types. Well. Kevlan, Funina twitched her lips and turned her head to look at Kevlan. It's not that I look down on you. It's just that you were only pushed out of the emergency room last night, and this afternoon you're planning to go and punish this level of out-of-control machinery. Are you sure you can really do it? The water world is a completely different world from the land world, where there are its own rules. Therefore, if you want to fight in the water, you must first adapt to the rules in the water. But this will take time. But now Kevlan wants to skip the process of adaptation and go directly to combat the brutal and uncontrollable machinery without wearing any diving equipment or protective gear. No, 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 Funina shook her head wildly. I absolutely don't allow you to do such a dangerous thing. You know, you were still lying in bed this morning. How could you recover to the point where you could go to battle in just one morning? How do you know if you don't give it a try? Kevlan reached out and withdrew the commission from Funina's hand. I just checked the map, and the out-of-control underwater machinery was distributed in the water between Fengdan and Ilya Island, and that's why I took on this commission. You can just watch from the patrol ship in a moment, Kevlan smiled. 15 minutes. I'll end the battle in 15 minutes. A worried expression flashed across Funina's face, but soon, the whispers around Kevlan and Funina made Funina burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, you are truly the friend I admire. You are confident, elegant, and have a clear understanding of your own abilities. So I, the water god Fukuros, is waiting here, waiting for your triumphant return. The usual performance tone and exaggerated acting skills. Kevlan scanned left and right without leaving a trace, perked up her ears to listen to the whispers as delicate as mosquitoes. Hey, is this girl a friend of the water god lord? Does she deserve the friendship of the water god lord? Lord Shueishan's judgment is definitely not wrong. This young girl must have something extraordinary. That's right, Lord Water God is a deity. She will never be wrong, she will never be wrong. There won't be any mistakes. There won't be any mistakes. Kevlan furrowed her brows slightly, and as her gaze fixed on Fengdan, she noticed that although she was laughing heartily, there was a flustered flash in her eyes. Did I become a burden on her performance? Kevlan's doubts accumulated more and more in her heart, but she knew it was not the time to answer them. Solve the monsters on the list of crusades and prove that you have the strength that meets the Fengdan's vision. Perhaps this way, the burden on the other party can be relieved a bit, right? Probably. Right. Passengers, please return to your seats and take your seats. This patrol ship is about to depart, and our guide, Ophicular, will serve you. The destination of this patrol ship is Ophicular Island. On the bow of the patrol ship stands a short, furry little animal. Kevlan didn't know what words to use to describe the other person, but in her eyes, the humanoid creature that claimed to be Ophicular was indeed an animal. Fengdan, Kevlan whispered as she leaned against Fengdan's side, what race is that monster? It seems like it has the ability to think and speak like humans. Kevlan herself was well aware that Ophicular was dressed in fluent body language and people around her greeted each other warmly. There was only one explanation for this situation, which was that the other person had already integrated into the human community. However, in order to understand the other person's race and identity, Kevlan decided to offend them once and use monsters to refer to them. After all, after arriving in this world, she only knew this adjective used to describe being different from humans. Shoo, keep it down. It's impolite of you to say that, Fengdan said softly as she grabbed Kevlan and explained to her, they are Milishan, a citizen who has been recognized by the laws and residents of Fengdan since arriving hundreds of years ago. Don't mention that in front of them just now, be careful not to be sued by them for intentionally provoking disputes. I see. I see, Kevlan murmured, Milishan. The other world is really wonderful, it seems that I need to speed up my adaptation. After saying these words, Kevlan lowered her head and began to study the things she had with her, such as adventure certificates, travel brochures, and the 2 commissions she had just taken on. Overall, she doesn't need clothes or anything like that. After all, the green ones don't have any distinctive style, they're just too ugly. Secondly, the travel manual provides a general introduction to the various regions of Fengdan. Kevlan flipped through the directory and quickly found the map of the water area between Fengdan Ting and Ophicular Island. Finally, there is the proof of adventure. This thing is really important for Kevlan because it records information about various monsters, including the type of out-of-control machinery she is going to fight against this time. For the next 10 minutes, Kevlan was buried in studying the out-of-control machinery on the map and adventure evidence. After all, even with a perfect grasp, knowing oneself and the enemy was not a problem. People around her occasionally cast questioning glances at her, mixed with Fengdan's worried gaze. But Kevlan knew that Fengdan's worried gaze was more about herself and the secrets she was hiding. Kevlan ignored the gaze of these people and focused on studying the information in her hand. If you ask her why she doesn't care about the looks of those people, that may be because she has encountered scenes that are even more desperate than this before. As research delved deeper, Kevlan noticed something strange. She squinted her eyes and read out a piece of information in a soft voice. All the equipment in Maple Dan, from streetlights to patrol boats and other working machinery, is powered by law compensation hybrid. Legal compensation mixed energy. Kevlan pondered the somewhat awkward name. Is it similar to Fengdan's own, new energy? But how is this energy produced? After flipping through all the materials and books at hand, Kevlan finally found information related to legal compensation in the travel manual. The Ophicular Opera House is the court of Fontaine, where Fontaine people can enjoy daily plays and watch the judge novelette Judge convicts. Whenever a trial is nearing its end, Grand Judge Novelette will issue a ruling, and after that, a second ruling will need to be ordered by the Cardinal of the Order. At this time, the Cardinal of the Order will resonate with the emotions of the audience in the opera house, thereby generating a legal compensation hybrid. By the time Kevlan reached this point, her mind was already a bit disorganized. She had thought that legal compensation mixed energy would be produced in many ways, such as extracting from minerals and converting the potential energy of water, but she never expected it to be related to any judgment, and it was only through resonance with the emotions of the Fengdan people that it was produced. This is too unscientific. Kevlan pinched her nose, feeling a buzzing sensation in her head. Indeed, a magical worldview cannot be imposed by the rules of my world. After learning about what legal compensation is, Kevlan felt that she had come with Fengdan right. She happened to be able to see what the so-called edict ruling cardinal was. After studying Kevlan thoroughly, a guard looked up at the surroundings and then stood up and walked up to Kevlan. "Miss, the area where the monster is located has arrived." Pop closing the books in her hand, Kevlan smiled and said to the other person, "Thank you very much." Then, after getting up, Kevlan took off her coat directly, and with a few gentle strokes, she folded it into the shape of a tofu block and placed it on the seat behind her. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2. Kevlan observed the surrounding environment while doing stretching exercises to move her muscles and bones. There was no explanation, and there was no need to explain anything. The few of them were not familiar with each other, so after warming up, Kevlan jumped up from the track cruiser, then curled up into a ball and flipped forward 3 times before finally using acceleration to charge downwards. Puktong Kevlan's speed of movement was astonishing, and before anyone on the patrol ship could react, she had already dived into the underwater world. This is not an exaggeration, but a declarative sentence. Her speed is really fast enough for a normal person's reaction speed to keep up, especially her jumping ability. "It's like locust." Fengdan murmured, "It looks like the locusts I've seen before." In the underwater world, Kevlan quickly adapted to the surrounding water temperature and pressure after diving here, and then she kept swimming towards the deeper depths of the water. At this moment, as she swam faster and deeper, many white bubbles suddenly appeared around her. These white bubbles kept rolling and increasing in number, just like the sea water was boiled by Kevlan's body temperature. And the fact is that Kevlan's body temperature is rapidly rising at this moment. In the end, she has been completely engulfed by the boiling seawater, but this situation has not lasted too long. 10 seconds later, a white line cuts through the seawater, and in the blink of an eye, it is about 100 meters ahead. There are 6 blood-red eyes on the left and right sides of the forehead, 2 long knives pop out from the back of both hands and arms, sharp teeth grow from the split chin, and the legs turn into strong and powerful locust legs. This is what Kevlan looks like now, because she was injured. It took her 10 seconds to successfully personify. That's right, she's a reformed person. In her original world, a few months ago she had a happy and fulfilling family with loving parents and adorable twin sisters, but suddenly one day Shioka broke into her home, killed her parents, and captured her and her sister at their base, transforming them into monsters. She is a semi-biological, semi-mechanical modified human with 3 different genes: locusts, spiders, and mantises. Because a part of her body is mechanical, she can recover quickly even if she is injured, let alone last night when a doctor performed emergency surgery for her. 8 eyes opened underwater, ignoring the soreness of seawater rushing into her eyes. Kevlan began to search for her target as quickly as possible, and by this time she had successfully arrived at the deepest part of the water. As for the water pressure issue, I don't think it was a problem for the reformer. Time is passing by bit, and the expressions of everyone on the patrol ship are also different. Some people are skeptical, some are worried, and some are waiting to see a good show, and Fengdan is naturally the one who worries. In her opinion, the success rate of Kevlan's successful campaign against those out-of-control machines is less than 10%. Finally, in the 10th minute after Kevlan was launched, the water below the patrol ship finally changed, and this change was bomb. Bomb 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 bomb. A violent explosion suddenly occurred on the sea surface of the entire water area. In the next moment, the thick and thin water column of the bucket surged into the sky, finally forming a huge wave in mid-air and hitting the patrol ship, directly turning everyone on board into drowned rats. Except for Fengdan. Her reaction was quite fast, and she raised her umbrella in advance before the huge wave hit, avoiding the wet end. But at this moment, no one cared about their already soaked bodies. They all ran to the edge of the patrol boat, leaned forward and looked down at the water below, wanting to know what had happened. From the perspective of these Taiwanese, they believe that there is only one possibility that can cause such great destruction and vision, and that is, there are people with divine eyes fighting. Their guess is destined to be wrong. Before they could see what was happening in the water, a white spider silk shot up from below and firmly stuck to the body of the patrol ship, and then Kevlan grabbed the spider silk with one hand and embraced 7 mechanical cores with the other, flying up from the surface of the water below. She flipped forward and landed steadily in the patrol boat. The clothes on her body became heavy due to being saturated with water, tightly adhering to Kevlan's body and slipping severely. However, there is no doubt that this wet young girl is a beautiful embryo with a stunning figure. Fengdan hurriedly rushed forward and carefully examined Kevlan's body from top to bottom, left to right. After confirming that the parts of the other person's body had not decreased or increased, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said, "Scare me to death. Ha ha ha, I knew you would come back triumphantly. You did not disappoint my expectations, Kevlan." The surrounding guards gathered around at some point, and now their eyes were no longer filled with doubt and disdain, but with respect for the powerful Kevlan. "Wow, miss, you are really impressive. You actually completed the task of the expedition with your own strength." Yes, and it really only took 15 minutes to get it done. You're really too strong. Miss, can you tell us your secret of strength? Even though you don't even have the eye of God, how did you become so powerful? The guards surrounding her each had their own opinions, which made Kevlar frown and say, "I'm sorry, this is my personal privacy and I don't intend to disclose it." Kevlan's refusal disappointed everyone, as they thought they could get the secret to becoming stronger from each other. However, at this moment, Fengdan spoke up and asked, "Kevlan, what was the thing you used when you just flew up?" Faced with Fengdan's question, Kevlan hesitated for a moment and said, "I'm sorry, I don't want to say it." Ah Chio. A piercing cold wind blew, causing Kevlan to tremble all over. She then sneezed and instinctively began searching for her coat. Just at this moment, Fengdan's attention had already fully focused on Kevlan's chest. It wasn't until then that Fengdan realized that the other person was 1.69 meters tall, and that the small hill on her chest was about the size of A to B, so, "Excuse me, Kevlan." Fengdan twitched her lips. "How old are you this year?" "Age." Kevlan put on her coat, although her body was already soaked. "In a few months, according to the time of my world, I will be 14 years old." Fengdan. Is this a figure that can be achieved at the age of 14? Is this girl developing too fast? Originally, in Fengdan's view, the other party's figure, height, calm attitude, and calm way of thinking must be around 20.2 or 3 years old. However, not to mention 20 years old, Kevlan is actually underage, and only 13 years old. Do people from other worlds mature so early? In the following time, the patrol ship continued to sail forward, and the people on board, who were soaked all over, consciously lay on their seats and basked in the sun, including Kevlan. Except for Fengdan, who had escaped the disaster by holding an umbrella in advance, she also had no intention of enjoying the disaster because, have I not rested well in these 500 years? Or have I eaten too little? Or is it because? What is it that my 500 years of development can't match someone's 13 years of development? Whispering softly, and this mosquito-like complaint was all heard by Kevlan. Apart from shrugging her shoulders to show helplessness, Kevlan didn't have any good way to deal with this. In the blink of an eye, the patrol ship traveled a long distance and they were about to reach the destination of their trip. Illyria Island. Chapter 5. The Ophicular Theater. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Lord Shueishan, passengers, the destination of this patrol ship. Magia Station on Ilya Island has arrived. Please board in an orderly manner and welcome to continue aboard our company's patrol ship next time. Following the guidance of Navigator Ofini, the passengers on board disembarked one after another and set foot on the reassuring land together. There was nothing worth stopping at the platform of the patrol ship. With the protection of the guards, Funina quickly passed through the passage of the platform and arrived at the outside world. There were many passengers waiting for the patrol ship inside the platform, and many of them were fanatics of Funina. In order to not delay time, they needed to pass quickly. Kevlan rushed out closely behind, not following Funina closely, but falling behind a few steps so that she wouldn't be noticed by those people. Rushing out of the platform to the outside world, Kevlan was blinded by the midday sun. She raised her hand to block the sunlight and also noticed Funina waiting for her by the fountain not far ahead. Stepping towards Funina, Kevlan suddenly noticed the shadow of something rushing into the corner of her right eye. When Kevlar turned her head to look, she happened to see a very magnificent building, and the appearance of that building. How to say, Kevlar couldn't help but think of Louis XVI, the king of the Gallic rooster who lived in her world for hundreds of years. That's the Ophelia Opera House. Funina appeared by Kevlan's side at the right time to answer her questions and dispel her doubts. It's both an opera house for the Maple Danes to watch after dinner and a trial court for those who committed heinous crimes. Kevlan also showed her surprise for the first time, because the architectural style of Tivat Continent is completely different from that of her original world. Therefore, driven by curiosity, she showed her other side. Her desire to explore the unknown. But this emotion only lasted for a few seconds. After calming down, Kevlan reached out from her backpack behind her and took out a map, looking down for something. The backpack was naturally the gift given by Catherine before. Kevlan put the 7 mechanical cores she dropped from fighting monsters into the backpack, and other items were also put in it. The reason why it is a shoulder bag is because on the other side of Kevlan's shoulder, there is a stone sword tied. Anything can be thrown, including her life, but this sword must not be thrown. To get to the point, Kevlan lowered her head and searched the map. Soon, through the commission to suppress Slim, she located the general distribution of those monsters in the south direction of Magia Station. After finding the activity area of those monsters, Kevlan closed the map and put them back in her backpack. With the glorious record of Kevlan successfully defeating 7 out-of-control machines in just 15 minutes, Funina has now controlled her emotions and guessed Kevlan's next actions. So she asked, "Do you want to come see a trial later? It's related to the disappearance case." "Of course I'll come," Kevlan agreed, "and I'll have to trouble Lord Water God to buy me a ticket." "Haha, it's just a small ticket. It's nothing to worry about," Funina smiled elegantly as she covered her mouth. "But you have to be careful. You must come in before the court session, otherwise you will be blocked by the people from the shadow chasing court." "Don't worry," Kevlan tightened her backpack, "I will definitely not be late." After finishing speaking, Kevlan walked towards the southwest without looking back. After reaching the boundary of the main road, she raised her hand and flipped directly out. Then she bent down and disappeared into the dense bushes. Watching the other person leave, for some reason, after Kevlan left, Funina felt a little. "Lord Funina," the voice of the guard sounded, pulling Funina's consciousness back to reality. "Let's continue on our journey. The trial will be held in half an hour, and Lord Villette has already arrived at the scene ahead of schedule. In addition, Miss Lorraine has been waiting at the entrance of the opera house for a long time." Turning her gaze back, Funina closed her eyes and helped the hat on her head. When she opened her eyes again, a sense of joy appeared in her eyes. "Let's go, join me. And enjoy the exciting performance that is about to take place." Funina left, accompanied by her guards, and left the fountain pool. They followed the main road all the way towards the Ophelia Opera House. After bending down through the dense bushes and taking 100 or 20 steps forward, Kevlan finally broke out of the chaotic grass and arrived at the broad outside world. However, the problem was that her body was also covered in emerald green leaves and dry branches, and she was like a wild man who had just come back from the wilderness to survive. Ignoring her disheveled appearance, Kevlan looked up towards the front. At a glance, there was only a few scattered small hills scattered around, with water being everything. Is it truly worthy of being ruled by the water demon god? Kevlan reached out and tugged at the shoulder strap of her shoulder bag. There is water everywhere, either small streams or rivers, and more importantly, big rivers. With no outsiders around, Kevlan became a little talkative. She talked roast and moved forward. Although the distribution area of demons has been determined, this is reality rather than game. Those demons may not stay within this range all the time. They may have left, or the position marked on this commission is biased. After all, Kevlan believes that the technological level of Tivat is still at a very backward stage. Although I don't understand, what exactly are those Malusian things? A group of furry little guys. They're short and comfortable to hold, take a sip. Hey, wait, why did I suddenly have this idea? It shouldn't be, I used to prefer the stars in the sky. Kevlan has been moving forward, surrounded by rivers and streams, so there is no need to worry about getting lost, and Kevlan has always been walking along the river. Oh God! That adventure book says that Water Slim is a water attribute monster that naturally loves to live by the river. I've been walking for so long, where did the monster come from? What kind of broken book, deceiving people, deceiving ghosts, I really want to fight quickly. As mentioned earlier, when there is no one around, the frequency of Kevlar talking to herself and the probability of getting angry will increase sharply. She is sensible, but it does not mean she will not get angry. Therefore, she usually vented her emotions when there is no one around. She just had a loud voice muttering to herself, and the loud noise would attract some very bad things, such as monsters. Thank you for your understanding and request. Suddenly, a strange noise came from within the bushes, the withered branches were crushed, the emerald green leaves became extremely moist, and a long line of mucus appeared on the soil. However, as if she had not heard any movement behind her, Kevlan continued to walk forward. During this process, she deliberately avoided all areas with water and only walked on the soil or collapsed tree trunks. And then, it turned out that Kevlan's move was correct. Kevlan is walking slower and slower, although she is still moving forward, her speed is far slower than the water flow around her feet. Because these water flows are now flowing backwards at an extremely fast speed. Before long, there was no more water beside Kevlan, and she casually lifted her hand, untied the bandage on her right shoulder, so that the stone sword could fall off her body. More than 10 black shadows shot out from the bushes behind Kevlan, and these monsters were exactly the water slime that Kevlan had been searching for. The small water slime was the size of an adult male, and the large water slime was the size of a bus. The goal of these monsters is very clear, which is to use their massive body to descend from the sky and crush Kevlan, the human who broke into their territory, and finally dismember and eat her body to obtain nourishment. But in the next moment, without hesitation, Kevlan moved her body half a step to the left and then turned to the right without hesitation. Reaching out his left hand to grasp the stone sword, Kevlan swept across with a heavy sword. Cha poo 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 poo. The sharp sword chi instantly cut all the bodies of Shui Slim, and they burst into small gel-like objects and finally fell to the ground. And Kevlan just made a very simple move. Holding the sword, waving it, and then turning her body back, and easily slaying these water slimes. Ah! It's really a low-level monster, Kevlan sighed, seeming disappointed. My body's sense of danger is really useful, I can sense danger without even looking. But then again, are these monsters really so weak? Kevlan looked up at the sun, determined her direction, and headed towards the Ophicular Opera House. Not necessarily. This is near the city center, so sending troops would be too costly, so it would have to be left to the adventurers to solve. And then again, does Fontaine have an army? Kevlan turned and walked to the front of the gel, squatted down and picked them up one by one. 1, 2, 3. 11 slim protoplasms. It seems that I just caught them all this time. Putting all the slime slurry into her backpack, Kevlan was ready to leave. According to the adventure certificate, the chance of slime slurry dropping is pitifully low. It should be because these water slimes absorbed all the water flow around before attacking me. Kevlan muttered to herself as she crawled out of the bushes and arrived outside. After seeing the location of the opera house, she extended her right index finger and aimed it at a tall tree next to her. Then, a spider's silk shot out from her finger, accurately standing on the crown of the tree. Kevlan grabbed the spider silk tightly and flew high into the air using its elasticity, while she swung towards the Ophicular opera house. She didn't mean to swing directly to the entrance of the opera house, she just swung onto a main road and fell to the ground. Instead, she ran towards the opera house. The trial was about to begin, and she had made an agreement with Funina that she would never be late. After rushing around the Lujing Spring, Kevlan finally arrived at the entrance of the opera house, and at this moment, her attention was drawn to a little mermaid at the entrance. Kevlan quickly adjusted her expression, and the last sudden break came to a stop in front of the Melu Xian. Hello, this Melicino seems to be a security guard here, and at this moment she is talking seriously to Kevlan. My name is Effie, the guard of the Ophicular Opera House. Are you Miss Kenlin, as Lord Funina referred to her? That's right, it's me. Lord Funina has already explained to me in advance that you are welcome to our largest opera house in Fengdan for the first time. We wish you a pleasant day ahead. After confirming Kevlan's identity, Ifei's expression relaxed a lot and a smile appeared on her face. She staggered her body, allowing Kevlan to enter the magnificent building in front of her. Suppressing a slight excitement in her heart, Kevlan stepped into the building in front of her. Entering the Ophicular Opera House through the main entrance, Kevlan is now in the lobby on the first floor. What appears in front of her are the long stairs on both sides leading to the second floor, and in front of her are two doors leading to the audience on the first floor of the opera house. Just as she was about to enter the audience seat on the first floor through the right door in front of her, a very familiar, short, furry figure was bouncing towards her not far away. Hello, Miss Kenlin. Marishan approached and greeted Kevlan. My name is Saro. Lord Funina asked me to wait for you here. Please come with me. Okay, at least there's no need to compete for front seats with others. Kevlan thought of it truthfully and followed this beautiful girl named Saro up the stairs on the right to the second floor. Of course, their destination is not on the second floor. After arriving at the corridor on the second floor, Saro took Kevlan to a staircase leading to a higher level, which was guarded by human guards on both sides. Seeing Kevlan carrying a sword, these two guards naturally stopped her and said, Miss, please stop. This is Lord Funina's designated seating area, and you cannot go up, especially if you are carrying weapons. Let her come up, Lord Funina has already explained it in advance. Saro's voice came from upstairs, and the two guards reluctantly let Kevlan pass. Kevlan walked into the stairs, feeling a bit puzzled. That Melushen seemed to have walked clearly. No, she didn't jump fast. Why did she disappear in the blink of an eye? Amidst her wild thoughts, Kevlan had already finished walking the stairs to the end, and here she saw Funina again. In addition to Funina, she also had Siro by her side, as well as a cold woman who was tall and exuded an aura of being away from strangers. Sedna. Claude. It's not important anymore, I'll soon know who it is. Kevlan thought to herself and withdrew her gaze from the woman. Kevlan, are you here? Funina's voice carried a hint of excitement. Come over quickly. This water god lord made an exception today and asked you to sit next to me. Funina pointed to her side, where a seat was already prepared. After Kevlan sat down in her seat, Funina continued, "This is Sero. You should have known each other on the way up just now, so I won't say much more. This is Miss Lorraine, the dual agent of our Ophelia Opera House." "Hello," Cleveland and Caroline greeted each other, but they only nodded slightly. Even if they said hello, Cleveland roughly understood each other's personality, but soon she felt very confused. Dueling agent. From the opera house or the trial court? Kevlan had already been confused by these terms. This can't be blamed on her, can it? Who is a good person to give the trial court the name of the opera house? Apart from her brother and a friend of her brother, there are two lazy people. One opens a detective agency and calls it detective agency, while the other opens a coffee shop and calls it coffee shop. They are extremely lazy. Of course, it's the trial court. Funina smiled slightly. Soon, she turned her head and pointed downwards. "Look, today's trial has begun. You can go through our Fengdan trial process later and you'll know." Upon hearing this, Kevlan nodded and stopped speaking, turning her attention to the trial below. It was at this moment that Kevlan saw a man appear at the judge's position. The other person is holding a cane, with steady steps, and every move shows stability and dignity. His name is Navulet, our highest judge in Maple Dan. Chapter 6. Fengdan's Trial System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is Navulet? Kevlan squinted her eyes as she stared at Navulet sitting in the judgment seat, muttering to herself, "Why is my intuition telling me that this guy is not human?" As a reformer, Kevlan has become accustomed to her extremely sensitive five senses, including this so-called intuition, that go beyond ordinary people. And now, her intuition is frantically reporting to her that the guy named Navulet is not human. What about him? What if he's human? What if he's not human? I shouldn't have had the chance to deal with him, right? Kevlan added with great uncertainty. After all, she knew that as an outsider in this world, she was likely to be targeted by some extraordinary existence. Just as Kevlan was having such wild thoughts, the trial below had already begun. The plaintiff walked onto the plaintiff's seat on the left, while the defendant first stepped onto the central stage, which is usually used for theatrical performances. The following scenes mercilessly shattered Kevlan's understanding of the trial, in her mind. In Kevlan's own world, the so-called trial is used to uphold justice and preside over a fair and just place. There are usually plaintiffs and defendants present, followed by defense lawyers for both parties, as well as the jury and most important judges. The judge announces the start of the trial, and then the plaintiff presents evidence to sue the defendant. Once the evidence is conclusive, the defendant can be convicted. If the plaintiff's evidence is insufficient, the defendant can be acquitted. This is roughly the process. Although Kevlan has heard that corruption is a norm in Gotham City, and that corrupt officials run rampant is a normal phenomenon. The so-called fairness and justice is often just a joke, but this cannot deny that the judicial system in her world is still quite perfect. To get to the point. But it seems that Fengdan's legal system is not like this. Firstly, there are no defense lawyers, and secondly, in order to demonstrate Fengdan's fairness, every defendant has a chance to become a defendant before boarding the dock. This opportunity is to engage in a fight with the dual agent. As long as the defendant can kill the dual agent and live to the end, they are eligible to refuse to become the defendant and regain their freedom. God damn it. Half an hour later, the first trial ended smoothly, and Kevlan raised her hand to touch her forehead to see if her CPU had burned down. She couldn't even imagine the relationship between this so-called duel and fairness, it was just a mess. What if? What if this defendant is a ruthless killer with extremely strong combat power and truly defeats the dual agent? Are you really letting him go? Let him be acquitted so that he can continue to kill. I'm a bit tempted to leave. Kevlan looked down at the Supreme Judge Navulet, who was giving the final verdict. After reading that edict and ruling on the role of the cardinal, I'll leave. During this half hour, the defendant refused to challenge the dual agent and then walked onto the defendant's seat, and the trial began. Then the plaintiff began to present various evidence related to the defendant and finalized the defendant's charges one by one. Until the end, when the defendant had nothing to say and admitted his guilt, Neuvillette stood up and announced the verdict of the trial to the audience sitting in the audience below. But the trial did not come to an end, accompanied by Neuvillette's "Please instruct the cardinal to give the final verdict," which made the drowsy Kevlan energized. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out from the entire opera house. Kevlan squinted her eyes to search and found that the light came from the pipes on the surrounding walls, which seemed to be gathering something from the crowd in the audience. Wait. Legal compensation hybrid. Kevlan felt something on her body leaving, but she couldn't feel any discomfort. So. The reason why the court named it the Opera House is to mobilize the emotions of those who come here, and this emotion will reach its peak in each trial. Finally, she was ordered to be collected by the cardinal and converted into legal compensation hybrid. But just as Kevlan was constantly pondering, some of the scattered rays of light that had peeled off from humanity drifted onto the stone sword behind her. These dots of light merged into the stone sword, restoring a slight shine to it. However, at this moment, Kevlan's attention was entirely focused on the decree and ruling cardinal, and she did not pay attention to this matter. The edict and adjudication cardinal, resembling a balance in appearance, presents evidence to sue the defendant during the trial. If the defendant cannot refute the evidence presented by the plaintiff, the edict and adjudication cardinal will tilt to one side. On the contrary, if the defendant can reclaim a city, then the cardinal of the edict will fall in the opposite direction. So and so, until the edict orders the cardinal to completely tilt to one side, then the trial will come to an end. The edict orders the cardinal to start collecting the emotions of everyone present and refining them into legal compensation mixed abilities, and give the final result of the trial. Funina, I'm curious about something. Kevlan approached Funina and asked, do you Maple Dan have the death penalty? The decree ruled that the final verdict given by the cardinal was that the defendant was guilty, and then Neuvillette had the court take him down and escort him to Maripenterburg on a certain day. No, Funina answered Kevlan's question. Since the founding of Fengdan, there has never been a word of death penalty. Most of the convicted prisoners have been sent to Maripi Petersburg. The familiar name, Mellow Petersburg, suddenly reminded Kevlan of something, which was that this morning, while having dinner with Kevlan, she accidentally mentioned a traveler named Kong. The other party also came from outside the Tivat Continent. Originally, Kevlan wanted to meet with the other party to exchange information, but they were now in prison and she didn't want to trouble Funina, so she gave up this idea. Watching the defendant being taken down by the enforcement court, the second trial will begin in 10 minutes. Kevlan also yawned and prepared to leave, saying, Funina, I need to take a step first. Goodbye. Are you leaving so soon? Funina chuckled, won't you continue to look? No need, I just need to understand the general situation, Kevlan smiled. And I still owe you money, don't I? I need to quickly settle the commission and get the commission fee, so that I can fulfill our agreement. I mean you, there's no need to be in such a hurry. Funina picked her own ponytail and said arrogantly, do I, the water god Fukuros, look like someone who is so short of money? So there's no need to be in such a hurry. That's not going to work, Kevlan interrupted Funina with a firm gaze. My brother once told me that since I made a promise with someone else, I had to give it my all. If the agreement is not fulfilled, then it loses the meaning of being called an agreement. Kevlan walked decisively, but Funina's gaze remained fixed on the position where Kevlan had just stood. 1 minute, 5 minutes, half an hour. Funina seemed to have settled in, and during this time she didn't move her gaze away. She kept looking at that position and murmured softly, promise. Promise. It wasn't until the 45th minute that Ciro noticed something unusual and quickly approached, saying, Lord Funina, why are you? Wow. Ciro's exclamation of surprise caught Chlorid's attention and also pulled Funina's consciousness back to the real world. It was only then that Funina noticed, hey, she raised her hand and wiped the tears from her cheeks. When will I? Are you feeling unwell somewhere? I'll go call a doctor for you right now. Sero was on the side, her face flushed with anger, and she hurriedly went to see a doctor. Wait, Sero, I'm fine. Funina quickly called out to Sero and reached out to grab her. Taking a deep breath, Funina's face regained its proud smile. She said arrogantly, my Fukuros is the demon god of water, and naturally has a much stronger affinity for water elements. Just now. I was just overflowing with water elements, ha ha ha. Funina's laughter echoed in the room, while Claude continued to focus on the trial, while Sero looked admiringly at her most revered Lord Funina. Everything has returned to the right track. Magia Station, in front of the patrol ship platform. Sigh. This world has no phones, no internet, it's a bit boring. Kevlan sat alone on the bench, tiptoeing up and looking down at the ants on the ground, silently counting how many ants had crawled past her. Although she used to have good academic performance, was very knowledgeable and reasonable, and looked like a young adult, she was only 13 years old, and she also had a playful nature as a young person. In fact, when she was traveling, she was carrying her phone on her back, but she also crossed a time and space tunnel and fell from a height of tens of thousands of meters. Even her previous clothes were burned, let alone her phone, probably turned into molten iron long ago. Ah, brother. Where are you now? Kevlan sighed, feeling a bit worried. I don't know if Mr. Shang knows what happened before. If he can help, he should be able to find his brother soon. In fact, Kevlan didn't know how she inexplicably crossed over. In her world, she had just driven the beast god Mixod to defeat the typhoon monster Balkane. At that time, 4 of her 6 hands were broken, and 8 eyes burst with an eyeball. Despite being severely injured, she fought desperately to chop off Balkane. After that, her consciousness began to become drowsy. In the end, she only remembered that her brother Zhao Mingcheng had found her and healed her injuries. He also gave her a scarf symbolizing the Cayman Rider, and after that doodle not far away, a whistle pulled Kevlan back to reality from her memories. She looked up and saw a patrol ship approaching the platform. It's time to go. Kevlan touched her shoulder bag to confirm that the loot inside was not lost. Let's go deliver the commission first, and then see if there are any more commissions to take. We need to complete the agreement as soon as possible and return the money owed to Funina. Standing up from the bench, Kevlan squeezed into the crowd and boarded the patrol ship from Magia Station to Fengdan with them. The journey afterwards was long and arduous. Without Funina by her side, Kevlan could only squeeze together with these Maple Danes and ride on the same patrol boat. However, from this perspective, it was similar to the things called buses in her world, especially the school buses used to pick up and drop off students. Kevlan vaguely remembers that every morning after waking up, she would be urged by her parents to wash up with her sister and then eat the delicious breakfast prepared by her parents. However, her sister Noya always procrastinates. Every time Kevlan has finished eating, Noya stumbles down the stairs, biting her toothbrush in her mouth. After that, after breakfast, the 2 sisters would take their school bags and say goodbye to their parents, and together with the children around them, they would get on the school bus and move towards the school. What a beautiful and precious memory. Kevlan said, her eyes already moist. If I don't look back carefully, if I don't deliberately remind myself, I'm afraid I'll forget. This beautiful memory is just something that happened a few months ago. Kevlan smiled self-deprecatingly, then lifted her right hand. After a burst of white mist, her right hand turned into a monster's hand. The joints of her fingers were unusually thick, resembling locust-like tissue, while on the palm of her hand were tiny tentacles like spiders, which could help Kevlan walk on the surface of the wall. A white mist seeped out from the gap between her palms, and in the blink of an eye, her hand changed back. Dear tourists, the patrol ship is about to arrive at the station. Please take your personal belongings and welcome everyone to continue choosing to take our company's patrol ship next time. Looking up at Melu Xian standing at the bow of the patrol boat, Kevlan followed the crowd and got off the boat after the patrol boat arrived. As the crowd walked out of the platform, Kevlan lowered her head and separated from the crowd, walking straight into a nearby alley. Then, she raised her hand and shot out spider silk, following the path she remembered when she arrived, returning the same way to the Adventurers Association. At this moment, the sun in the west has begun to set, and the glow of the sunset shines on the earth, bringing the last bit of warmth to people. At this moment, Kevlan, dressed in the afterglow of the sunset, finally arrived at the Adventurers Association. Welcome to the Adventurers Association towards the stars and the abyss. Catherine looked at Kevlan, who came to the window and smiled. Welcome back, Miss Kevlan. May I ask if you have anything to do? Bang, the heavy backpack was placed on the counter by Kevlan, and then she spoke up, excuse me, could you please count the number of spoils? I need to deliver the commission. Chapter 7. The Great Magician and the Maple Dan Prophecy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wow. Wow, these currencies called Mora are really inconvenient to carry. After coming out of the Adventurers Association, Kevlan received her first bucket of gold, which she earned through her own abilities. But can we say that the power gap of adventurers in this world is very strong? Kevlan rubbed her chin, thinking. Just now, when she was delivering the commission, Catherine's long calm face finally showed a surprised expression. In Catherine's words, she thought Kevlan would eventually give up the commission because only experienced legendary adventurers could complete such a level of commission in such a short amount of time. Forget it, it's useless to think about these things. After all, this world has a divine eye, and it's normal for adventurers to have power gaps. Kevlan said as she took out 2 new commissions from her backpack. I'll continue to complete the commissions and accumulate more. I hope to encounter some monsters worth taking seriously this time. Even if they were uncontrollable machines in the water before, they were just things that would shatter with just a touch. Kevlan looked at the commission in her hand and read it softly. Conquer the 8 out-of-control machines near Baisong Town, conquer the 2 turbid water phantom spirits that appear near Baisong Town. Putting the commission back into her backpack, Kevlan then took out the map and began to plan a route to Baisong Town. The sun had already set behind the mountains, and a bright moon hung high in the sky. After seeing the moonlight, Kevlan hesitated for a moment and said, "Why? It turns out it's already dark." Time passed quickly, but Kevlan did not feel tired. After checking her physical condition, Kevlan still decided to go to Baisong Town. However, before that, she had to pay respects to her 5 organs temple. After all, since breakfast with Funaina in the morning until now, she has not dripped water. Weighing Mora, who had just arrived, and listening to the loud noise, Kevlan sighed and said, "Sigh. You still need to pay attention to maintaining the vitality of this body. If you starve to death, your brother should be sad." The Mora she earned from completing the commission this time is not enough to return to Funaina. Because her commission is quite special, it's not a person seeking notice, but a demon seeking notice, and for people in this world, monsters are all cruel. In the past, if they encountered monsters, it was a never-ending battle, and there was no time to confirm their appearance. Therefore, Kevlan's commission requires a large amount of Mora to be paid, and even so, there are still very few adventurers willing to take on this commission. With this thought in mind, Kevlan left the Adventurers Association and continued on the road across the window. As night fell, many people returned home early to reunite with their families. On both sides of the road, street lights powered by mixed energy from Law came on, dispelling the darkness on the streets. Kevlan walked on the main road and occasionally saw several humanoid machines passing by, patrolling the streets like police officers to ensure safety. After walking downhill to the bottom of the slope and continuing for more than 10 meters, Kevlan finally saw Catherine's blacksmith shop for the first time with her own eyes. Even at night, the temperature at the blacksmith shop was surprisingly high. As Kevlan passed by the entrance of the blacksmith shop, she could still see the female shop owner wearing short sleeves constantly wiping sweat. Passing through the blacksmith's entrance, Kevlan turned left along the road and continued on. Soon, two forked roads appeared in front of her. The left road leading to the underground, and not far ahead of the right road was a CAFA. After arriving at the center of the fork in the road, Kevlan first bent down to look at the bottomless road on the left. After a while, she withdrew her gaze and shook her head to choose another path. What Kevlan saw and heard along the way confirmed one thing, which is that Fengdan is very prosperous and stable. Many shops either sell flowers or fruits, and there are other clock shops and other shops that exist. However, now that the sun has set, these shops have closed early and closed down. Passing by the CAFA door, Kevlan turned her head to look at the closed CAFA and shook her head. I hope my luck isn't that bad, so all the snack shops in the city won't close, right? Kevlan knew that the Debo Grand Hotel she and Funina went to this morning must still be open because it was a high-end restaurant specializing in providing high-quality service. However, Kevlan wanted to save some money so that she could repay Funina as soon as possible, so she decided to casually find some food and dry food to store, so she had no plans to go to the Debo Grand Hotel. Passing through the coffee shop and then a short uphill path, passing under an arch bridge, Kevlan's eyes lit up as she finally found a snack shop that had not yet opened. The lights in the snack shop have been mostly turned off, and the owner is already tidying up the clutter on the counter, preparing to close the door and go home. He sold many snacks today and made a lot of money. This money is enough for him to save up and buy some gifts for the children during the holiday. Dada, the shop owner's face was filled with a smile, and he didn't feel any hardship at all. Just as he was about to close the store door, footsteps echoed behind him, and he instinctively turned around and said, "Welcome to this small shop. May I ask if the customer has anything they want to eat?" The shop owner was so busy that he almost forgot. He had already turned off the lights and closed the door, ready to go home. However, out of professional habits and personal qualities, he thought about it and decided to reopen the store door, turn on the chandelier again, and let the small shop be filled with warm light. Watching the shop owner's actions, Kevlan also felt warm in her heart. Regardless of whether they were trying to make money or not, this move proves that they truly respect her customer. "May I ask if there are any remaining snacks and drinks?" Kevlan asked, "Could you please pack them all for me? I'll just go home and eat." "Boss, hurry home too." Kevlan's words made the shop owner smile and say, Hey, okay, I'll just pack the remaining snacks and drinks for the customers." Not long after, the food and drink were all packed, and the shop owner handed them over to Kevlan, who also paid for more. "My name is Louis, welcome guests to visit our store again next time," the shop owner Louis said to Kevlar, and then he turned off the lights and closed the door. After saying goodbye to Kevlar, he went home. Watching Louis disappear at the corner of the street, the surrounding area once again regained tranquility. Kevlan glanced at the food in her backpack and muttered to herself, "Find a place where nobody is, take a break." Kevlan followed the route on the map in her memory and planned to leave Fengdan first. After finishing her food, she went directly to the riverbank to find a boat and found a way to reach Baisong town before dawn. In her opinion, the earlier she completed the commission, the faster she could receive the money and then fulfill the agreement. But is it necessary for me to buy a boat? Kevlan turned around, ready to leave the snack shop. Fengdan is full of rivers, and having my own boat would make it much easier to move around. But when I don't use a boat, who should help take care of it? Kevlan lowered her head and muttered to herself, her attention shifting entirely to where to eat and whether to buy something on the boat for a while, so she didn't notice at all that two siblings were running straight ahead. "Brother, you're too slow. There's nothing I can do. There are a bit more magic pockets to distribute today, and I just sent an old lady home. Her location is a bit remote, so it took some extra effort." The siblings ran in front of each other, with the older boy leading the way. However, He kept looking back and talking to his sister, I hope there's still a snack shop open, otherwise we'll have to go hungry tonight. I don't want it, I'm hungry. As the older brother, the boy could only give a bitter smile, but in the next moment bang, head-to-head collided fiercely, and then the boy bounced back and fell to the ground with a ouch sound. He reached out to cover his head and said, it hurts so much. Ah, I'm sorry, may I ask you? The young man's reaction speed was very fast. He ignored the hat that had been knocked off and quickly got up, intending to pull up the person he had knocked down. However, when he got up and was about to reach out to pull up the other person, he found that the girl in front of him showed no signs of falling. Are you okay? The young man sneered, I'm sorry I bumped into you. My name is Linny, and this is my sister Lynette. Hello, Lynette walked over from the side and obediently greeted Kevlan, handing her hat to Linny. I'm sorry, but we siblings are in a hurry to come here and see if there's still a snack shop open, intending to fill our stomachs, so we ran a bit hastily. Linny looked at Kevlan with a confused expression and a hint of sweat, thinking he had hit her. Are you really okay? Kevlan said she had nothing wrong with it. Her skull had already been replaced with some sturdy alloy by a repair card, so it's better to say that Linny was okay. After all, Linny was like hitting a steel plate directly. Kevlan was a bit confused because her attention was focused on the divine eyes on Linny and Lynette. The eye of God. Interesting. Kevlan murmured softly and quickly shook her head. I'm okay, what about you? You're not injured, are you? Ah, of course I didn't. It hurts so much. Linny originally wanted to pretend to be okay and touch the part he hit, but the next moment he found a big bump bulging on his head, causing him to grin in pain. This is natural, who would be okay if an ordinary person bumped into a steel plate? Kevlan sighed and then searched her backpack, took out 2 snacks, and threw them to Lynette. It's already very late, and the nearby snack shops should be closed. Kevlan looked at the siblings in front of her. My brother taught me that meeting by chance is fate. So these are for you. Thank you, Lynette said obediently. Until then, Kevlan found out that Lynette had cat's ears, steamed cat-ear-shaped bread, on her head and a long cat tail behind her buttocks. Lynette was really like a cat and looked very cute. Fantasy world. Kevlan's mouth twitched as she began to develop immunity to this situation. Kevlan walked towards the Linny siblings, to be precise, preparing to bypass them and follow this avenue. And just as Kevlan brushed past Linny, Linny suddenly shouted, please wait a moment. Kevlan let out an imperceptible sigh, then adjusted her form and turned around to ask, is there anything else? I'm actually a magician, Linny shrugged with a confident expression. To thank you for your food, I also gave you a gift. Don't you take a look at what's inside your bag. Kevlan tried to pretend not to care, but in fact, she already knew Linny's little trick. The so-called magician is actually a person who relies on many special means to show the so-called miracle to the world. But unfortunately, half of Kevlan's head has turned into steel, and she really doesn't like these romantic things. She knew from the moment she passed by Linny just now that he had put a pocket-like object into her backpack with extremely fast hand speed and technique. From this point alone, Linny's hand speed was actually very fast, but it was still too slow in front of her as a reformed person. Is this? Kevlan took out the pocket from her backpack and asked in confusion. It's a magic pocket, Linny said proudly. You can keep it, and in the future, when facing prophecies, you will have a means of self-protection. Oh, prophecy. Kevlan became interested. What is that? Don't you know? Linny was very surprised and then looked up and down at Kevlan. Are you just recently at Fengdan? In order to clarify the so-called prophecy, Kevlan returned to Linny and said, yes, I am a recent traveler to Maple Dan and I am not particularly familiar with Maple Dan's history. Kevlan didn't lie either. What she had learned from Funina before was the history of the entire Tivat Continent, not Fontaine. Well, where should we start? Ha, Linny suddenly laughed, my sister and I are still hungry, aren't you? So why don't we find a place to eat first and then chat slowly? After cursing in her heart, Kevlan nodded and said, you're a good chicken woman. Kevlan followed the siblings and left the main road together, arrived at a nearby green area, and then sat down on a bench to enjoy dinner. Until the moon hung high above their heads, several people finally eliminated the food in their hands and filled their stomachs. Of course, there is still some food in Kevlan's backpack, but she plans to use it as dry food for future adventures. In this unfamiliar world, she must prioritize herself. Alright, so next. Linny clapped her hands, I'll tell you the prophecy of Maple Dan that has been circulating for a long time. Once upon a time, a rumor spread from a certain place in Fengdan, and it spread at an extremely fast speed, eventually becoming a widely circulated prophecy. Linny looked at his sister leaning on his shoulder and smiled, all Fengdan people were born with sins, and no matter how the just country Fengdan judges, it cannot be dissolved. Until one day, the sea level of Maple Dan will begin to rise, and those who bear sins will gradually be submerged by the sea. Linny lowered his head, making it difficult to see the expression on his face at this moment. In the end, everyone will dissolve in the sea, and only the water god himself will cry on the throne. Only then will the sins of the Maple Dan people be washed away. Linny's prophecy officially came to an end here. After listening to it, Kevlan couldn't help but think of Funina's figure in her mind. The water god is on the throne. Crying, Funina. Thank you for the intelligence, Mr. Linny. Kevlan glanced at Linny and got up to leave. The chance encounter ends here. Kevlan walked onto the main road, ready to follow this path and leave the main city of Fengdan Court. But Linny smiled at this moment and said, not necessarily, this unknown young lady. I don't even know your name, so our fate will never end like this. Kevlan, who had already walked far away, suddenly stopped. Because it was far away, Linny did not hear what the other person said, but saw them pointing to her own head. Head. No, it's a hat. Linny reached out and took off his hat, but the next moment he widened his eyes because inside his hat, 2 golden moras were stuck to the bottom of the hat with spider silk. Linny, who has been engaged in intelligence work for many years, is well aware that these 2 moras were paid by the other party for intelligence expenses. The other party wants to completely cut off this causal relationship, so even if Kevlan gives them food, they still need to leave money behind. Really? Linny became restless for no reason, as the situation did not proceed according to his thoughts. Meeting by chance is fate. Isn't that what you said? Can it really just be meeting by chance? Brother. Lynette called out to him gently, calming Linny down a bit. When Linny looked up, he found that there was no figure of Kevlan on the main road, as if she had evaporated out of thin air. Let's go, Lynette. Linny pulled her hat and tightly gripped Mora in her palm. Let's go back and meet up with Fimini before heading to Meripenterburg. We must proceed with the next plan as soon as possible. We must never let Father down. Chapter 8. Late Night Encounters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After bidding farewell to the Linny siblings, Kevlan first walked a distance on the main road. When she reached a place that the Linny siblings couldn't see, Kevlan raised her hand and shot spider silk, sticking to the city wall. Then, with one hand pulling, she took off in place. Afterwards, things became much simpler. Although there were few tall buildings in the city of Fengdan Court, the surrounding walls were outrageously high. So much so that when Kevlan used spider silk to cross the walls and reach the outside of the city, she found that the ground below was at least 100 meters and nearly 200 meters high. There are also benefits. Such a high distance allows Kevlan to walk slowly on the ground. Just as Kevlan followed the call of gravity and fell towards the ground, her back suddenly erupted in extreme heat. The air twisted under the heat, and white smoke seeped out from the gaps between her back skin. After a blink of an eye, Kevlan rushed out of the white smoke and relied on the wings that appeared behind her to glide towards the riverbank at an extremely fast speed. This thing was also a product of Shuka's transformation of her body, belonging to the accessory of the praying mantis gene. However, Kevlan usually does not summon it because this thing is essentially just a thin film and cannot help her take off in place. Therefore, it can only be used as a glider in such situations. Soaring at a height of several hundred meters, Kevlan overlooks the surrounding land, facing the cold night wind, which gives her a feeling of relaxation and satisfaction, as if she is the only one in the world at this moment. Only me. Alone. Kevlan murmured to herself. Just a height of a few hundred meters cannot support her to glide for too long, and after a few minutes, the distance between her and the ground is only a few centimeters. Should the excess heat and energy in Kevlan's body were released, and her wings behind her disappeared. She flipped forward and fell to the ground, then slid forward 2 or 3 meters before coming to a steady stop. At this moment, what appeared in front of her was an endless river. No, it was the sea. Next, it's time to check if there are any docks and ferries nearby. Kevlan looked around. It's better to only have fishing boats. I hope my luck stays online tonight. In fact, Kevlan could dive directly into the water from here and swim straight to Baisong town, but if she did so, everything in her backpack would be destroyed. Additionally, she was not sure if there were any more dangerous creatures lurking in the seawater, so she dismissed the idea. She is just transforming people, not superhumans, and there are limits. Once she reaches the limit but still encounters danger, the only outcome is death. Although Kevlan looks down on the monsters she has encountered so far, it doesn't mean she will take the unknown existence lightly. Taking a glance at the sea in front of her, Kevlan picked a random path from the left and right sides in a dotted manner, and then proceeded towards the path she had chosen. The process of searching is long. Kevlan doesn't know how long she has been walking, but as soon as she turns around, she can see the tall and majestic city-state. Now, thinking about it, Funina may really be the water god, Kevlan muttered to herself. Such a magnificent city-state was built by her and her own people over these 500 years. 500 years. For gods like them, perhaps it's just a blink of an eye. Ordinary people like us may just be passing by in their lives. An hour later, Kevlan looked back and found that Fengdan had become very small. She had already walked quite far, and apart from the nearby track of the patrol ship, there were hardly any buildings of human society around, and only the sound of small animals running past. Thank you for your understanding. Request. Not long after, while passing by a dirt road, Kevlan suddenly heard a sound in the bushes behind her. This time, her expression became slightly more serious and she glanced back. But when she looked at the bushes, the noise suddenly stopped. Sigh. I've met a group of idiots, Kevlan shrugged as she continued walking forward. There should be no firearms like this in this world, but even if there are, it won't have any impact on me. Kevlan recalled for a moment, it seemed like she had never seen anything like firearms so far, but it was just that she hadn't seen it yet. While strolling around the Maple Palace, she had observed that the technological level of this city-state was somewhat similar to the steam age of her world. With this level of technology, it should be possible to develop firearms and similar things, right? Kevlan was wandering and taking steps forward, while the bushes behind her made a new sound. Several black figures shuttled between the bushes and began to gather towards Kevlan. The pitch-black outskirts were out of sight, and there were no longer the sounds of small animals around. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely solemn. At this moment, a loud roar exploded, dispelling the dead silence of the night. Hands on, take this girl. In the bushes, more than 10 thieves holding sharp weapons jumped out. They had already formed an encirclement that trapped Kevlan to death, and the leader believed that this woman would never escape their encirclement. All of them are cold weapons. Kevlan sighed, somewhat disappointed. It's still exciting to go clean up the gang with my brother. It's Gatling and RPG, these thieves are really weak. Before the thieves put their sharp weapons on themselves, Kevlan gently jumped up on her toes, then turned her body so that her head was down and her feet were up. She put her right hand on the ground to support her whole body. The next moment, with her right hand as the fulcrum, Kevlan spun her whole body at high speed, and a few spinning kicks fiercely hit the faces of the thieves who surrounded her, sweeping them all out in no time. Ah! My face. My nose, stinky girl. What's going on? This girl doesn't look very strong either. She doesn't even have a divine eye. Why aren't we enemies of unity? The leader covered his face and twitched his eyes as he looked at Kevlan, who had regained her composure, through his fingers. Damn it, I thought she was just a woman with a bit of oily skin, but I didn't expect her strength to be so strong. He said their group of thieves are robbers who robbed homes nearby, and this is where they are staying tonight. They had originally planned to rest here for one night and leave tomorrow morning, but the person in charge of night duty suddenly came to tell him, who was the leader, that they had discovered a new target. The leaders of the thieves were very disappointed and prepared to let go of Kevlan after seeing her. The reason was that such a thin and weak woman could not have any oily water. However, soon, the thief's henchman reminded him that the sword wrapped in bandages behind Kevlan must be valuable, because if it is not worth it, why wrap it with bandages to hide its true face? The thief leader was suddenly moved, seeing that Kevlan was just a woman, so he had a crooked mind. Better kill by mistake than let go. The thief leader surrounded Kevlan with his brothers, preparing to snatch the sword and investigate. The result was that they were all knocked down by Kevlan's move. A dozen or so murderous thieves were actually knocked down by a woman who looked extremely thin and weak. This is a great shame. Go ahead, get rid of this stinky girl. The thief leader turned red and shouted to the others, what are you all staring at? Take out the gun. Gun. Kevlan frowned slightly and became serious when she heard the leader's words. 8 thieves holding long knives rushed towards her, but Kevlan never paid attention to them until one of the thieves came in front of her and swung a weapon towards her, when Kevlan moved. She did a very simple action, which was to lift her foot and stomp it down hard, ah, ah, ah. The thief cried and howled, as his right foot had been trampled into a meat patty by Kevlan, completely disabled. After stomping off this foot, Kevlan didn't stop. Instead, she lightly jumped up and rushed towards the second person. As she approached the other person, she swept out a leg and swept it towards their cheek. With great force, she threw the person to the ground, shattering her teeth in her mouth. After landing, Kevlan performed a forward somersault with both hands propped up in front of the other 2 people, then reached out to grab one of their hands and twisted it hard, ah ah ah. My hand has become fried dough twists. Please spare your life, ah ah. Kevlan casually threw these 2 thieves aside, then tilted her head and focused her gaze on the remaining 5 people. Before your companions bring guns to support me, please help me move your hands and feet, she said, ah ah ah. Stop it. My feet, ah. The one-sided battle began, and although these thieves were decisive and experienced in killing, they did not have a chance to win in the face of a huge power gap. Moreover, Kevlan has not shown her true abilities so far, she has only been using brute force throughout the process. Just as Kevlan dealt with the last thief and broke his long sword with her bare hands, the next moment she suddenly tilted her head to the right. A bullet brushed past her hair, and a few strands of hair fell down. After evading the shot, Kevlan turned to look in the direction of the bullet's attack. Damn! Did you miss the shot? The thief leader held up a gun and spat, damn it, it's too dark to see anything clearly. You guys, shoot with me and turn this stinky woman into a sieve. The thief leader and 5 thieves around him, 6 of whom aimed their guns at Kevlan, who was hiding in the dark, pulled the trigger together. Bullets flooded in, but at this moment, Kevlan's hands were already emitting strong white smoke, and she took steps forward. Dang! Dang 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 dang. Kevlan did not dodge, let alone retreat. She relied on her inherited danger perception ability from the spider gene and her blade ability from the mantis gene. At this moment, as she moved forward, she waved the fast knives on her arms and backs, chopping all the incoming bullets into pieces. Kevlan swung her knife faster and faster. In a non-completely bizarre state, her body had reached its limit and was faintly on the verge of collapse, with crimson blood overflowing from the corner of her mouth. Damn! Damn! The thief leader was already numb. What kind of monster is this? It's clear that she doesn't even have the eye of God. That's all for today. Kevlan spat out a mouthful of turbid blood. I need to quickly find the boat. Thank you all for accompanying me in rehabilitation training. Kevlan's windbreaker suddenly stirred, but not because of the wind, but because Kevlan's second pair of arms had emerged from under her armpits. Immediately after, the newly emerged hands shot out spider silk, and with the help of her second arms, Kevlan laid down several people except for the thief leader and locked them in place with spider silk. After dealing with those few people, Kevlan stomped her right foot high and jumped up, and as she was about to land, she swung a knife and directly cut off the gun in the hands of the thief leader. What? Cough ah. Before the thief leader could react, his neck was immediately stuck by Kevlan's one hand, which instantly blocked his breathing. Let go of me. The second pair of arms retracted into Kevlar's body, and at the same time, the double knives on the back of her arms were also retracted into her arm bones. Kevlar increased her strength and forced, I won't kill you, but as compensation for robbing me. Tell me, where is a boat near here? I don't know. The thief leader said intermittently, his face turning a bit pale and beginning to show a hypoxia reaction. Kevlan squinted her eyes and let go of the thief leader, but that didn't mean she let him go. The next moment, after the thief leader knelt to the ground, he covered his spiritual cover with his 5 fingers and claws. Then Kevlan dragged this guy to a nearby big tree and pressed his face firmly against the trunk. Speak up. Woo-woo. Bang, pulled him up, Kevlan gritted her teeth and increased her strength, smashing him fiercely towards the tree trunk. Pushy red blood spurted out, and Kevlan quickly stepped back to avoid it. When she approached the thief leader again, his head had swollen into a pig's head, tears, nosebleeds, and runny nose couldn't stop flowing. His teeth had long been shattered, and now when he saw Kevlan leaning over, his eyes were filled with only fear and despair. Woo-wally vaguely shouting a lot of things, Kevlan's face turned cold as she approached the other person slightly and lowered her voice. I'll ask you one last time, where is the ship? Kevlan asked this because she is now very confident that these people must have a boat. According to her observation, there are towering trees and shrubs that can feed people in the vicinity, which are very suitable for concealment. Since these thieves are camping here, it proves that they have just done something big recently. And less than 20 meters away from here is the sea. These people are probably thinking of resting overnight in this jungle and heading to the shore to escape by boat tomorrow morning. This is Kevlan's guess, but now she wants to use force to turn it into reality. Bang, cough ah. Kevlan lifted her foot and stomped on the abdomen of the thief leader, her eyes cold to the extreme. At this moment, the thief leader had nothing in his mind and only wanted to survive. Unable to speak, he nodded frantically and pointed his chin towards the sea. One of his hands was being stepped on by Kevlan. After receiving a clear answer from the thief leader, Kevlan finally withdrew her feet and took a few steps back. Next, she reached out her hands and continuously shot spider silk, pulling the thieves scattered around one by one, and also brought a bundle of ropes from their camp. Afterwards, Kevlan spent 5 minutes tying these guys one by one to nearby trees. Her spider silk can only last for 5 hours, after which it will naturally decompose, so she still needs the help of this rope. After dealing with all of this, Kevlan clapped her hands and prepared to leave. As mentioned earlier, these people must have only recently become wealthy and then fled to this place. Since that's the case, the Fengdan Court's enforcement court or shadow chasing court should have been dispatched long ago. If their enforcement level is not a problem, then it is estimated that these thieves will be discovered before noon tomorrow. Ignoring the howling thieves, Kevlan turned around and headed towards the direction pointed out by the thief leader earlier. Pushing aside the bushes blocking the way and bypassing the towering trees, Kevlan carried a shoulder bag and a stone sword. After more than 10 minutes of difficult walking, she finally walked out of the forest and arrived at the edge of the cliff. Looking down at the sea below, Kevlan quickly spotted 2 ferries on the coast. Steel hulls with diesel engine propellers. Kevlan secretly rejoiced in her heart that she had really made a profit this time. With the help of spider silk, Kevlan jumped directly off the cliff and in a few breaths, landed in front of the 2 ships. However, before and after arriving at the ferry, Kevlan did not rush to board the ship, but instead pondered a question, which was, the key. Gone. She actually forgot to search for the key, which was really inappropriate. However, besides the key, there is another problem that lies in front of her, which is, those police officers will definitely ask about their next action plans from those thieves' mouths, which means that these 2 ships are destined to be known by the police, so. Kevlan gritted her teeth, I can only choose between 2 and drive away one of them. After arriving at the destination, I have to find a way to sink the ship to the seabed and destroy the evidence. Perhaps she stayed with her brother's friend, that unscrupulous businessman, for a while. Kevlan's thinking sometimes deviates. In fact, the whole thing doesn't need to be so troublesome. She just needs to rest in this place for a night, and then go to the dock as usual tomorrow morning, rent a boat to go to Baisong town, and there's no need to go in such a big circle. But how to put it? Transforming people's thinking, normal people don't have to worry, because you are a normal person. Next, Kevlan continued to choose the Jianmao approach and ultimately chose the ferry on the left. When she jumped onto the ferry and pushed open the door in the driver's cabin, she smiled and said, very good, it seems that my luck is really on the line today. Inside the cab, on the control panel in front of Kevlan, a key was quietly inserted, indicating that the ferry could be started at any time. Sigh. Hiss, turning the key to start the engine, the ferry made a loud noise in the pitch-black night. The next moment, Kevlan started the diesel engine and proceeded along the route shown on the map towards Baisong town. Chapter 9. Boys. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Night is always full of danger for humans, because it stems from the innate resistance to unknown existence in biological instincts, which is a fear evolved from the desire for survival. Kevlan drove the ferry, looking at the map while advancing in the darkness. Occasionally looking up outside the window, all one can see is a boundless sea of water and boundless darkness. But this darkness was quickly brought to an end, because not far from the ferry, a spot of light suddenly appeared. The closer you get to that spot of light, the stronger it becomes, until it eventually evolves into a series of rays of light. Baisong town. Kevlan looked at the distance between herself and the island, and during this time, the distance between the 2 sides was constantly getting closer. At the same time, Kevlan's feet had begun to ooze white smoke, and her body temperature was rapidly rising. Until the ferry was only about a kilometer away from the shore of the island, Kevlan's legs had turned into strong and powerful locust legs. It's time to say goodbye to you, even though there's no need for us to say that between us. Pushing the door open, she walked out of the cockpit and onto the deck. Kevlan faced the island and then slowly squatted down. At this moment, the temperature in her legs skyrocketed, and powerful energy began to accumulate in her legs. The next moment, bang, the entire ferry shook violently, with Kevlan's engine at the center. Shockwaves spread in all directions, and as they swept by, the ferry collapsed in an instant. The bottom of the ship's hold flooded and began to sink towards the seabed. As for Kevlan, after releasing the strength accumulated in her legs, she flew straight into the sky and jumped towards a height of over 100 meters. At first glance, it seemed like she had risen in place. After jumping into the sky, Kevlan's thin wings spread out again behind her, and she glided towards the nearby island, preparing to land outside the town of Baisong. Soaring in the night sky, Kevlan finally entered the nearshore area of this island, and she took this opportunity to see the full view of Baisong town with the help of the faint light below. Baisong town was not built on the ground, but in a deep pit. The scale of this pit is very large, just like it was once hit by a meteorite from the sky, and it can at least accommodate tens of thousands of people to survive. Kevlan squinted her eyes slightly as she noticed something very interesting. A massive sailboat, and the entire town of Baisong seemed to have been built around this sailboat. Some kind of symbolic meaning. Or is this an organization of this small town? Kevlan guessed casually, but it was only a guess. At this moment, her flying altitude was getting lower and lower, so Kevlan turned around and prepared to land on the ground outside of Baisong town. She had no intention of entering Baisong town late at night. After landing on the ground, Kevlan released the personification of her legs and back, and then took out a map and commission from her backpack. Let's start by fighting against these out-of-control machines, Chaos We Phantom Spirit. Kevlan flipped through the adventure certificate manual in her hand, flipping it to the page of the Muddy Water Phantom, slightly furrowing her brow. This is a type of monster made up of water elements, but compared to low-level monsters like slime, the Muddy Water Phantom can freely change the shape and structure of its body in battle, achieving unexpected killing of enemies. It seems you have to be careful. Kevlan put away things outside the map. The phantom spirit of the turbid water. I hope I can handle it. At this moment, Kevlan had already regarded the turbid water phantom as some extremely dangerous monster, because the description of freely changing the shape and structure of the body made Kevlan mistakenly believe that these monsters had the same intelligence as humans. If that were the case, dealing with them would be quite troublesome. Following the instructions on the map, Kevlan bypassed the small town in front of her and climbed towards the high mountain. The out-of-control machinery for this expedition was located on a high mountain according to the map's instructions. Kevlan speculated that these machinery should be used to carry out tasks such as picking fruits and vegetables or cutting down trees. After all, if it were mining, it should not be on the mountain. Climbing the mountain slope took a lot of time, and by the time she reached halfway up the mountain, Kevlan had already begun to breathe lightly. Taking advantage of her break, Kevlan turned her head to look east and was surprised to find a faint dawn appearing on the mountaintop in the east. Is it almost dawn now? Kevlan closed her eyes and felt the fatigue in her body. But she couldn't feel any drowsiness at all. Sure enough. If it was before, her mother should call their sisters to get up and get ready for school in a few minutes. If it were not long ago, Zhao Mingcheng would come and call her and Black Talisman in a while, ready to go to school. Brother. Kevlan murmured to herself as she looked at the growing dawn in the east, I will wait for you. Kevlan took out a bottle of Fengdan from her backpack, drank the drink in one gulp, and then stood up to continue heading towards her destination. Actually, there wasn't much road left, and Kevlan rested here to prepare for the upcoming battle. After flipping over a small hill in front of her and walking more than 10 meters forward, Kevlan's transformed eyes finally caught a glimpse of something unusual. Several out-of-control machines were rampaging ahead, 1 kilometer away from here. Several fruit trees were cut off by their electric saws, and then the trunks of the trees were stacked by these robots, becoming their sturdy fortress. Alas, I don't know who created these robots. Can't we write code well? Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many out-of-control machines, including those swimming in the water and those running on the ground. While nervously grasping her hair and roast, Kevlan turned around and prepared to continue climbing the mountain. She planned to glide down from high places with thin wings and directly rush into the fortress built by these robots. But just as she took a step up the sloping slope, her ears suddenly received a scream from not far away. "Help! Can you say?" Kevlan looked again at the position where the out-of-control machinery was located. This time, she focused and made her eyes strange, and with these non-human eyes, Kevlan finally saw clearly. In the fortress built by out-of-control machinery, in the area where out-of-control machinery runs rampant, an extremely thick fruit tree stands tall, and above the tree crown, a little boy is constantly seeking help. "A child. Are you joking?" Kevlan paused, ignoring everything else, and ran towards the target area at an extremely fast speed. Kevlan's speed was very fast, and a distance of 1 kilometer was quickly brought closer by her in just a few seconds. During her running, she reached out and pulled away her windbreaker, and at some point, an extra belt appeared in front of her lower abdomen. "Is that okay?" Kevlan looked at her belt with uncertainty. "Can my body transform now?" His uncontrollable machinery gathered in front of the last big tree, and they, holding electric saws, began to cut down the tree. The boy on the tree crown shouted and held onto the branches tightly, afraid to let go. But this is just useless work, because those out-of-control machines will soon be chopping down this tree. Buzz, the design of Kevlan's belt is very unique, with 4 fans in the central core area, and in the next moment, these 4 fans rotate together, henshin. Expand. With a fierce stomp of her foot, Kevlan leaped into mid-air, and then her waist belt began to crazily absorb the surrounding wind, and then Kevlan's body began to change. Firstly, the body turned into a monster and became strong, followed by being wrapped in tight tactical clothing that appeared. The legs turned into locust legs and were then wrapped in tactical boots. 6 other eyes appeared on her head, her chin cracked and sharp teeth grew, and a long beard representing a praying mantis appeared on her forehead. Finally, a helmet appeared and wrapped around her head. The red scarf finally appeared on her neck, which was a symbol of Kevlan herself. A symbol of the Kamen Rider. Roaming and rumbling, the tree ultimately failed to withstand the cutting of the chainsaw and collapsed with a loud bang, while the boy desperately closed his eyes and prepared to follow the tree's fall and smash it towards the ground. Just then. "Don't worry," Cleveland lightly landed on the tree crown and picked up the boy. "It's okay now, just relax." Listening to the female voice ringing in his ear, the boy quietly tore open a slit in his eyes, intending to observe the surroundings. However, he was startled at first glance because he saw himself flying in mid-air. Wow! The boy opened his eyes in fear and quickly grabbed towards his side, wanting to catch something. The result was that he hugged Kevlan's waist. "It's okay, don't worry," Cleveland comforted him. "You're safe now." It wasn't until then that the boy realized he had been saved by someone, and he heard that he was probably a woman. So he looked up and wanted to thank Kevlan. "Thank you. Thank you, sister, for saving." Wow! But it didn't matter at first glance. As soon as the boy saw Kevlan's helmet, he was scared and screamed, "Monster! Monster ah!" This sentence made Kevlan's mood couldn't help but drop, but soon she quickly adjusted her state and said, "What's the stinky little ghost shouting at? If I were really a monster, now you have been eaten by me." As she spoke, Kevlan leaned closer to the boy and made a sound like, "Aha." Mainly because Kevlan had never seen a cannibal monster with a silly eye, so she casually disguised a kind of voice, which was scary anyway. The boy trembled uncontrollably, showing no signs of being comforted. Instead, his eyes were shrouded in mist and he was about to cry. "Still can't do it." Kevlan stopped scaring him and focused on controlling the thin wings on his back, landing towards the ground. "Sure enough. There's still a lot of difference between my brother and me." Kevlan couldn't help but recall the scene when she was rescued from the repair base by her brother. They were both Kamen Riders and monsters, but Kevlan's brother could always do better than herself. Bang! After landing steadily on the ground, Kevlan let the boy down, but the boy was already afraid and stiff all over, holding on to Kevlan tightly with both hands. Sigh. Kevlan raised her hand and touched the other person's head. "Little devil, it's time to let go. You're safe now. The boy trembled as he opened his eyes and looked around. After realizing that he had really returned to the ground, he slowly let go of his hand and then fell to the ground. Really? Kevlan looked at the boy and muttered softly, even though it's still dark now, why would a little ghost appear in this wilderness? Kevlan glanced at the east, and the dawn of a new day shone on the world, causing her eyes to ache. She quickly moved her eyes and complained, "My eyes. All 8 eyes were pierced by the sunlight together, it hurts so much." While roast, Kevlan suddenly raised her hand and blocked a chainsaw from behind with the blade that popped out from the back of her arm. Buzz. Click 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 click. The friction between the chainsaw and the blade caused sparks to burst out. Kevlan looked coldly at the out-of-control machinery in front of her, not expecting their aggressiveness to be so strong. "It's better to pack up these things quickly," Kevlan looked back at the boy. "We must send this little ghost back first. He must be a resident of Baisong town." After transforming, Kevlan's physical fitness and function were several times higher than before. Faced with the uncontrollable machinery rushing towards her in front of her, a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes. The next moment, another blade popped out of her other arm's back. Cha-cha-cha. Stepping forward, wielding 2 knives, the 8 machines were instantly decapitated by Kevlan. The heads of the robots were usually used to control the central command organs of the whole body. After Kevlan cut off the heads of these machines, they fell one by one, losing their mobility. After solving these out-of-control machines, Kevlan put away her left-hand knife and turned to walk to the nearest out-of-control machine. She used her right-hand knife to remove the energy core in the opponent's chest, ready to take it back to the Adventure Association for commission. Not long after, Kevlan removed 8 cores and put them in her backpack behind her. She looked at the boy, who, like an ostrich, was afraid and buried his head in her arms. "Really? Is it that scary?" Kevlan touched her helmet, her emotions sinking to a new level. "Who?" hissed the fan on Kevlan's waist belt started, expelling excess wind energy from her body. After a few breaths, her tight tactical suit disappeared. Stepping on the soft lawn, Kevlan walked up to the boy and looked down at him. The boy always buried his face in his arms, afraid to look up at the outside world. Kevlan didn't say much, nor did she make any further requests to send the boy home. She just turned around and sat down on the ground, close to the boy. After a while, Kevlan seemed to feel a bit bored, so she raised her hand and shot spider silk out of her fingers. Kevlan collected the scattered fruits around her. "This seems to be called bubble orange, right? What strange name. It's like bubble gum." Kevlan rose in her heart, and soon collected a large bag of bubble oranges. Just at this time, Gollum. A crisp growl echoed between the two, and Kevlan turned around to look at the boy, whose ears were red. "Puzzy." Kevlan chuckled, it didn't matter. After laughing, the boy's ears turned even redder. It was obvious that he was hungry. Just thinking about it, the sun hasn't even risen in the early morning. An unarmed boy appeared in the wilderness, surrounded by a large group of uncontrollable machinery. How could he possibly carry food? Just Kevlan still doesn't know why this boy appeared here. Thinking about this question like this, Kevlan took out the last hamburger from her backpack, tore open the packaging, and handed it to the boy. "Eat it quickly, your stomach is already growling hungry." Faced with Kevlan's speech, the boy finally made a new move. He quietly lifted his head and revealed one eye to examine the outside world. After confirming that the out-of-control machinery had disappeared and the previous monster was gone, he quickly reached out and snatched the hamburger from Kevlan's hand, wolfing it down. "Really, no one will compete with you, so eat slowly," Kevlan smiled. At that moment, she seemed to have found some kind of identity as a sister, even though she was actually only 13 years old. The boy stuffed the hamburger into his mouth 3 times, 5 times out of 2. During this time, he frantically raised his hand and pounded his chest, clearly choking on it too quickly. However, Kevlan squinted her eyes and smiled, quietly hiding the backpack to her side, not wanting to share the drink. After eating the hamburger, although the boy still felt a bit afraid of Kevlan, compared to the previous refusal to talk, the other party was clearly letting go of their guard. However, how to put it, the dignity of a man made the boy afraid to actively communicate with Kevlan. Watching the boy like this, Kevlan thought of her sister Noya. When the two sisters quarreled, Kevlan always admitted her mistake first. Suddenly, when Kevlan asked Noah why she didn't apologize first, Noah replied, "I also have dignity and face. Apologizing first doesn't exist." At that time, their sisters was only 8 years old. Kevlan didn't know where Noya saw her dignity, so she learned and sold it now. It was just a parody of adults by little kids. Recalling the beautiful past, Kevlan's face was filled with a smile as she muttered to herself, "My name is Kevlan Kenlan, and you?" "Woi." The boy muttered softly, but as he quietly turned around to see what Kevlan's reaction was, the other person was smiling at him, and the boy knew that expression, which was a mocking smile. "My name is Wei. I'm 9 years old this year. I live in the western district of Baisong Town." The boy Wei's competitiveness was aroused by Kevlan and he shouted loudly, which made Kevlan laugh. Before Wei could tell him the color of his underwear, Kevlan quickly stopped him and said, "All right Wei, I just want to know your name." "This is for you." Kevlan handed Wei the bubble oranges she had just collected, which surprised him. "Sister. Sister, this is." Upon hearing the other person call her sister, Kevlan suddenly awakened to some strange attribute in her heart. Then she forcefully stuffed the bubble orange into Wei's arms and said, "Just take it. There is only one small town nearby, which is Baisong Town. You little brat, who runs here all night without sleeping, has any other purpose besides picking bubble oranges? Also, haven't your adults told you? There are out-of-control machinery wandering around here, so you should stay away." Faced with Kevlan's scolding, Wei stood up very disobediently and said, "I'm not a little kid. I'm already 9 years old this year, and I'll be 10 years old in 3 days. I can beat monsters like those just now with just a few punches and 2 kicks." Kevlan raised her hand to support her chin, and this time she did not undermine Wei's confidence. Seeing that Wei had slightly regained her vitality, Kevlan stood up with her knees propped up, her body swaying. "Go back." Kevlan looked in the direction of Baisong Town. "Your family is still waiting for you, isn't it?" After saying these words, Kevlan noticed something from the corner of her eye, which was that Wei suddenly lowered her head, with only despair in her eyes. Also, a child whose family has undergone changes.